This is the W5SC repeater, PL110.9. When is Skynet?
I don't know.
Does Charlie know?
Always 9 p.m. Saturday on 146.88. Duh.
Mr. Chairman, I need to make myself very clear. If we uplink now, Skynet will be in control of your military.
But you'll be in control of Skynet, right?
That is correct, sir.
Skynet.
Does anyone need to use a repeater before we begin the 9 p.m. Skynet? This is Whiskey Bravo 5, Oscar Zulu Lima. My name is Brenda, and I'll be your net control for this session of the VARC Skynet. Skynet is a weekly net called every Saturday night at 9 p.m. concerning the subject of astronomy. Our purpose is to help amateurs become more familiar with the nighttime sky and daytime sky, astronomy, and space in general. This net is open to all amateurs interested in this topic, and we encourage your participation, comments, and suggestions for this net. Stations with priority or emergency traffic may enter the net at any time using the pro sign break break and your call sign. Is there any emergency or priority traffic? This is a directed net. Please do not transmit without direction from net control. That would be me. And stations are reminded to ID at the end of your transmissions. This weekly net operates on 146.88 megahertz with a PL tone of 110.9. Check-ins via Echolink are also possible using the W5 SE-R station ID or Echolink node 37247. Tonight's topics, astronomy charts, pictures, and live audio video links are available online. Go to W5SC.org right now for that complete list. Remember to tell others about this popular net. All amateur radio operators are welcome. You need not be a member of any amateur radio club to participate. The net is 90 minutes long and is structured in several parts. 1. General announcements. 2. Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas events. 3. National Space Society events. 4. Discussion topic of the evening. 5. What's up? 6. Space exploration and space history. 7. Constellation of the week. 8. Space launches of the week. 9. Recent astronomical discoveries. 10. Visible satellite passages over the next couple of days. 11. Astronomical Q&A, and 12. 73 round. All amateurs licensed to transmit on this frequency are invited to check in. So let's go ahead and do some check-ins. We'll start with low power and short time. Please come now with your call sign, name, and where you're transmitting from this evening.
Kilo 5, Mike Charlie Delta, Cody in Dallas, low power.
Okay, we got one. We got Kilo 5, Mike Charlie Delta, Cody. Thank you for checking in tonight. Okay, let's take some general. Please come now.
Kilo Foxtrot 5, Juliet Hotel Alpha. Chaz. Third planet from the sun. Good to hear you, Brenda.
November Tango 5, Tango Mike, Tony and Dallas.
Kilo Golf 5 Uniform Foxtrot Romeo, Jacob Dallas.
November 5, Bravo Bravo. Bill in Irving.
This is This is Alpha Golf 5, Papa Mike, Rich in Rockwall, AG 5 p.m.
Okay, it's a start. We have KF5JHA, Chaz, NT5TM Tony, KG5UFR Jake, N5BB Bill, AG5PM, I think it's Rich. I hope it's not Rick. Looks like Rich to me. And I must say, it is great to be back on the air. I want to thank K5ICX for fixing my antenna and getting me going again. It's been, this move has been a long, hard road, but things are getting better. And it's just great to be back in the saddle here. All right, let's take some more general check-ins.
This
is Kilo India 5, Zulu Oscar Echo Tommy from Balch Springs.
This is Alpha 5, Alpha Hotel, Robert and Richardson. Kilo India 5, Quebec Alpha X-Ray, McKinney, Texas. Kilo Foxtrot 5, Zulu Bravo Lima, Bill, Farmers Branch.
This is Whiskey Bravo number 4, Mike Foxtrot India, WV4MFI, Ted Dallas Low Power.
This is Kilo Golf 5, Whiskey Victor Lima, James in Carrollton.
Bravo Zulu Whiskey J near Weatherford.
Okay, that's a good batch here. We got Kilo India 5, Zulu Oscar Echo, Tommy, AA5AH, Robert, KI5 Quebec Alpha X-Ray, and you said you're from McKinney, but I did not get a name. Could you please come back with that?
Yes, Kilo and KI5 QAX, the name is Louis.
Key Lewis. And KF5ZBL, Bill. WB4MFI, Ted. KG5, Whiskey, Victor, Lima, James. And Jay, as long as I've known you, I can't remember your prefix and you blipped out. So would you please come back with your whole call?
Kilo Golf 5, Whiskey, Victor, Lima.
All right, thank you, James. And I need a fill from Jay, whose end of his call is BZW. I missed the first part, and of course I don't remember. Would you please give us a fill, Jay?
Kilo Golf 5, Bravo. Kilo Golf 5. One more time. Kilo Golf 5, Bravo Zulu.
Very good. I copy Kilo Golf 5, Bravo Zulu Whiskey from Jay. Let's take some Echolink check-ins. Please come now.
This is Kilo 5, Kilo Tango X-Ray Kelly in point.
Kilo Tango X-Ray, Kelly, sorry. And the next one was pretty unreadable. Would you please come back with your call sign and name?
Kilo Foxtrot 5, Delta Echo Bravo, Jason, Plano.
Okay, I got Kilo Foxtrot 5, Delta Echo Bravo, Jason. Thank you all for checking in tonight. Now we'll have check-ins from any mode. Please come now.
Kilo India 5, Gulf Romeo Hotel, Melissa, Third City.
Kilo Charlie 5, Mike, Papa Oscar, Jamie, Mobile, Oak Cliff.
Okay, we picked up Kilo India 5, Gulf Romeo Hotel, Melissa, and Kilo Charlie 5, Mike, Papa, Oscar, Jamie. Thank you all for checking in. All right, let's move on. Do we have any general announcements for this evening's net? This can be ham, astronomical, space, or general interest to licensed hams. Please come now.
November Tango 5, Tango Mike.
November Tango 5, Tango.
I'd like to encourage everyone to sign up for the Dallas Amateur Radio Club Show and Tell. Our September 5th meeting program will be presented by all of us, club members, friends, supporters. Please bring anything you'd like to show us, an antenna, a new rig, a favorite old rig or old tool, a strange vacuum tube you found at a flea market, and talk about it for a few minutes. Sign up at w5fc.org. Don't forget that our awesome battery box build lecture and lab will take place next weekend at the Dallas Medical Center at 10 a.m. in the third floor community room. The kits are $100, first come, first served. More details at, yes, you guessed it, w5fc.org. Tomorrow, this Sunday, is a third Sunday. We'll have a meeting on the air, which is, of course, open to all amateurs who like to share what's going on in their ham world, on this repeater at 7 p.m., and a Races training net at 8 p.m. Only Races appointees can check into the Races net, but everyone is welcome to listen to the training and ask questions after the net. And, of course, tonight's Afterglow movie, it's too late to start watching it, is a good one but a long one, 2001: A Space Odyssey. Join us at 10:30 p.m.-ish, plus or minus a few minutes on this repeater, to discuss the movie. Please try to talk for less time than the movie runs. NT 5 p.m. back to net.
Well, now we set that bar pretty high for Afterglow. If we don't go past midnight, we think it's a failure. So I don't see any point in trying to restrain ourselves. Okay, other announcements. The AMSAT Radio Amateur Satellite Group has 2 nets available to Dallas residents on Tuesday evenings at 8 p.m. Central. You'll need Echolink installed and be registered. You can find the net under Groups and AMSAT. Also, a live audio link is available on their website at amsatnet.com. This net originates in Houston, Texas. Dallas AMSAT Net East, Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas, is every Tuesday at 8 p.m. on this repeater, 146.88 megahertz. DL tone, 110.9 megahertz, Tuesdays. Tom, N5HYP, is net control. All are welcome to check in. First Tuesday of the month is DARC Club night, so no AMSAT East that night. Dallas AMSAT Net West is every Wednesday at 9 p.m. on the Arlington repeater, 147.14 megahertz, PL 110.9 megahertz, positive offset. So the DARC hosted nets on Mondays. The first week is Ham Fixins. Second week is MCOM 101. Third week, Ham Fixins again. Fourth week, GeekNet. Fifth week, Surprise Net. If you told you what it was, it wouldn't be a surprise. On-air participation is encouraged. And Tuesdays, AMSAT East, 8 p.m. Fridays, Cert City Simulation, 8 p.m. Learn about emergency radio communications via CERT-trained amateur radio operators. Melissa, KF5JRH, is usually the net control. Visit the most disaster-prone city in the universe every Friday. Cert City, all are welcome. And Saturdays, TechNet, 7 to 8 p.m., and, of course, Skynet. First and third Sundays, Dallas Amateur Radio Club meeting on the air, MODA. Daily, we have the ARRL Traffic Net. It's a National Traffic System Training Net every night at 6:30 p.m. Central. All are welcome to check in to any or all of these nets. Next one is the Afterglow movie information. I'd like to ask Tom, KE5I6, if he'd like to read this highly accurate synopsis of tonight's movie.
Why, thank you, Brenda. I will do exactly that. This is tonight's Afterglow info. Dr. Floyd was the dullest scientist to ever walk the face of the earth. His deadpan delivery was demoralizing and monotone. He was so dull that everyone on his space flight opted to take a later space clipper to the space station. Yes, he was that dull. The thing was empty, except for the dull doctor. The flight attendant brought his meal. He attempted small talk with her, and she instead fell into a weightless unconsciousness. Join us for the big one, 2001: A Space Odyssey from 1968. And honestly, pretty good movie. Back to you, Brenda. KE5IQ.
Yeah, that sounds just like the movie I watched. Yeah, it was pretty good. All right, next, Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas events, where and when you can look through a telescope. I'm going to call on Chaz, KF5JHA, to tell us more about it.
Thank you, Brenda. So the Afterglow movie is 2001: A Space Odyssey. Oh, it's a hell of a movie. If you haven't seen the movie, you didn't get that joke. The next Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas Club meeting will be held in 6 days on Friday, August the 25th, and the meeting will be held at 7:30 p.m. in person at the University of Texas at Dallas, and also held on Zoom. The featured speaker is Dr. Mahana Malali. I believe I've really messed up his name, from the University of Houston, and his topic is going to be about astrobiology. Now, Saturday night public observing sessions have begun. After the lockdown, we were on hiatus for quite some time, but they've begun again. Skynet was picked to be on Saturday night so that there'd be an opportunity for live reports from the Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas public observing stations. Now, on the third Saturday, which is tonight, the stargazing is held at Cedar Hill. Is there any amateur radio operator that's at Cedar Hill that would like to make a report now? Come down with your call sign. I have insider information from Echolink that says that Cedar Hill was canceled due to the heat. Wonder how hot it got today. Haven't checked. It was still only up to 109 day before yesterday. About the same thing yesterday. Whatever it was today. You can check the Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas website at texasastro.org for up-to-date information and details about meetings and public observing sessions. This is KF5JHA, back to our net control. Once again, Brenda, it's great to hear you back on the air.
Thank you, Chaz, and it is so great to be back. Thank you very much. Next up, National Space Society events and activities. I'm going to call on Bill N5BB for some information on that.
Thank you, Brenda. This is N5BB, November 5, Bravo, Bravo. It's great hearing you back on the air, Brenda. Really good to hear your voice. Very, very glad to have you back here. And I happen to be the membership director of the North Texas chapter of the National Space Society. Our last meeting was last Sunday, and as I reported last week about the meeting was actually given by some hams, which were Cynthia and Dietrich Wisenand, who are talking about the Sun, Moon, and Mars, and exploration of those objects in our solar system. That was a really good presentation, by the way. It was available on WebEx. The next meeting of the National Space Society, our meetings are the second Sunday of the month. So our next meeting is going to be on Sunday, September the 10th. The speaker is Kamisha Simmons. I met her at the International Space Development Conference in Frisco, Texas, back in May. She gave a presentation there, and she's going to give another presentation in our meeting here in September. She's going to give a presentation about private property rights in outer space, which is a really interesting and complex topic. So she's a space nerd interested in law in space. National Space Society has some events coming up here in the DFW area. Big one next week, a week from today, next Saturday, August the 26th, is Space Day at the Fort Worth Museum of Science and History, which is on Gindy Street in the Museum District in Fort Worth, a couple blocks from the Amon Carter Museum. It'll be on Saturday, August the 26th, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. They'll have Space Day there, and the National Space Society, North Texas chapter, will have some tables set up, and I and others will be there handing out NASA lithographs and all kinds of other interesting things about space. So, Space Day at Fort Worth Museum of Science History, a week from today. Then, the next week, we got lots of stuff coming up, which is September the 2nd. This is 2 weeks from today. There will be the last time we will be at Garland. The space exhibit, which is a traveling NASA exhibit, at Garland City Hall, 200 North 5th Street in Garland. It'll be Saturday, September the 2nd. We'll be there from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., again with National Space Society tables and literature and things. And it's a really neat display there with NASA artifacts and some displays talking about the companies in the DFW area in North Texas that were involved with the manned space program, the Apollo, Gemini, and Mercury programs, and the space shuttle. So that's a very interesting traveling NASA exhibit. It goes around the country, and it's been in Garland for the last few weeks. So again, Saturday, September the 2nd, Garland City Hall, last day before they close that exhibit. And that's all the current things going on with National Space Society. If you have an interest in joining the National Space Society or our local chapter, or if your dues have run out and you want to renew your dues, hint, hint, to people listening, there's several of them that are commonly come to this net. Please contact me, N5BB at ARRL.net, or space at Byrom.net, SPACE at BYROM.net. And I will let you know how you can join the National Space Society or our award-winning local chapter. Thank you very much, Brenda. This is N5BB.
Thank you, Bill. And this is WB50ZL. Do we have any more check-ins now?
Kilo Oscar 4, Kilo Quebec Alpha. Mark.
This is November 5, Oscar Foxtrot, Clay, Embassy.
Kilo Bravo 9, Sierra Oscar Kilo, Sean in Fort Worth.
Call Joe in Arlington.
Okay, I think we had a double and it may need a fill. Mark, I copy you as Kilo. I don't know if it's a 0 or Oscar 4, Kilo Quebec Alpha. Would you please correct me?
Kilo Oscar 4, Kilo Quebec Alpha. This is Mark visiting in Dallas.
Thank you, and welcome to our net. Kilo Oscar 4, Kilo Quebec Alpha. Then we have N5 Oscar Foxtrot, Clay. Then I think we had a double. I had KB9SOK. Not sure of your name. And then there was a double after that, Joe, I think. So, KB5SOK, please come back with your name.
Yeah, it's Kilo Bravo 9, Sierra Oscar Kilo, Sean in Fort Worth.
Thank you. And the next one, I believe, is Joe, but I totally missed the call because you doubled. Would you please come back with it?
Kilo Golf 5, Zulu Mike in Arlington.
Didn't quite catch that. Would you mind repeating it again, Joe?
It's Kilo Golf 5, Zulu Mike Golf.
Thank you. We got Kilo Golf 5 Zulu Mike Golf. Thanks for that correction. All right, it's time for our discussion topic of the evening. You may have seen this in some of the news items, but Neptune doesn't look the way it used to. It's disappearing clouds, and they've figured out they are linked to our solar cycle. So if you can't see the feed on this, you can go to a number of websites online and see the pictures, because pictures are really interesting. Okay, astronomers have uncovered a link between Neptune's shifting cloud abundance and the 11-year solar cycle, in which the waxing and waning of the sun's entangled magnetic fields drives solar activity. This discovery is based on 3 decades of Neptune observations captured by NASA's Hubble Space Telescope and the W.M. Keck Observatory in Hawaii, as well as data from the Lake Observatory in California. The link between Neptune and solar activity surprises planetary scientists because Neptune is our solar system's farthest major planet and receives starlight with about 0.1% of the intensity Earth receives. Yet Neptune's global cloudy weather seems to be driven by solar activity and not the planet's 4 seasons, which each last approximately 40 years. At present, the cloud coverage seen on Neptune is extremely low, with the exception of some clouds hovering over the giant planet's south pole. A University of California, UC Berkeley-led team of astronomers discovered that the abundance of clouds started to fade in 2019. I was surprised at how quickly clouds disappeared on Neptune, said M.K. Pater, Emeritus Professor of Astronomy at UC Berkeley and senior author of the study. We essentially saw cloud activity drop within a few months, he said. Even now, 4 years later, the most recent images we took this past June still show the clouds haven't returned to their former levels, said Erandi Chavez, a graduate student for the Center for Astrophysics, Harvard-Smithsonian in Cambridge, Massachusetts, who led the study when she was an undergraduate astronomy student at UC Berkeley. This is extremely exciting and unexpected, especially since Neptune's previous period of low cloud activity was not nearly as dramatic and prolonged. To monitor the evolution of Neptune's appearance, Chavez and her team analyzed Keck Observatory images taken from 2002 to 2022, the Hubble Space Telescope archival observations beginning in 1994, and data from the Lick Observatory in California from 2018 to 2019. In recent years, the Keck observations have been complemented by images taken as part of the Twilight Zone program and by Hubble's Outer Planet Atmosphere's Legacy OPAL program. The images reveal an intriguing pattern between seasonal changes in Neptune's cloud cover and the solar cycle, the period when the sun's magnetic field flips every 11 years as it becomes more tangled like a ball of yarn. This is evident in the increasing number of sunspots and increasing solar flare activity. As the cycle progresses, the sun's tempestuous behavior builds to a maximum until the magnetic field breaks down and reverses polarity. Then the sun settles back down to a minimum, only to start another cycle. When it's stormy weather on the sun, more intense ultraviolet radiation floods the solar system. The team found that 2 years after the solar cycle's peak, an increasing number of clouds appear on Neptune. The team further found a positive correlation between the number of clouds and the ice giant's brightness from the sunlight reflecting off it. These remarkable data give us the strongest evidence yet that Neptune's cloud cover correlates with the sun cycle, said DePater. Our findings support the theory that the sun's UV rays, when strong enough, may be triggering a photochemical reaction that produces Neptune's clouds. Scientists discovered the connection between the solar cycle and Neptune's cloudy weather pattern by looking at 2.5 cycles of cloud activity recorded over the 29-year span of Neptunian observations. During this time, the planet's reflectivity increased in 2002 and then dimmed in 2007. Neptune became bright again in 2015, then darkened in 2020 to the lowest level ever observed, which is when most of the clouds went away. The changes in Neptune's brightness caused by the sun appear to go up and down relatively in sync with the coming and going of clouds on the planet. However, there is a 2-year time lag between the peak of the solar cycle and the abundance of clouds seen on Neptune. The chemical changes are caused by photochemistry, which happens high in Neptune's upper atmosphere and takes time to form clouds. It's fascinating to be able to use telescopes on Earth to study the climate of a world more than 2.5 billion miles away from us, said Carlos Alvarez, staff astronomer at Keck Observatory and co-author of the study. Advances in technology and observations have enabled us to constrain Neptune's atmospheric models, which are key to understanding the correlation between the ice giant's climate and the solar cycle. However, more work is necessary. For example, while an increase in UV sunlight could produce more clouds and haze, it could also darken them, thereby reducing Neptune's overall brightness. Storms on Neptune rising up from the deep atmosphere affect the cloud cover, but are not related to the photochemically produced clouds, and hence may complicate correlation studies with the solar cycle. Continued observations of Neptune and are needed to see how long the current near absence of clouds will last. The research team continues to track Neptune's activity. We see more clouds in the most recent Keck images that were taken during the time NASA's James Webb Space Telescope observed the planet. These clouds in particular seen at northern latitudes and at high altitudes as expected from the observed increase in the solar UV flux over the past approximately 2 years, said DePater. The combined data from Hubble, the Webb Space Telescope, Keck Observatory, and the Lick Observatory will enable further investigations into the physics and chemistry that lead to Neptune's dynamic appearance, which in turn may help deepen astronomers' understanding not only of Neptune, but also of exoplanets, since many of the planets beyond our solar system are thought to have Neptune-like qualities. The findings are published in the journal Icarus. And I believe this article is stolen from NASA.gov. Anyway, you can go there and find information about it. Okay, next up, Chaz, KF5AHA, with his feature, What's Up?
Why, thank you, Brenda. Good evening, everyone. This is Chaz, KF5JHA. For those of you that are not on the video stream, you're showing my first slide, Slide Master. You're not showing yourself eating ice cream. Yeah, Tom's not showing us him eating ice cream anymore. We call this segment of Skynet What's Up because it's all about what's going on astronomically over the next couple of weeks. Slide Master, slide number 2, please. August the 16th was the moon's new phase, so the current phase of the moon is a waxing crescent. If you didn't get to catch it in the evening sky tonight, you'll be able to do that tomorrow night too. Also on August 16th, the moon was at apogee, which is the point in the moon's orbit that's furthest from the Earth at a distance of 406,634 kilometers. On August the 24th is the first quarter phase of the moon. On August the 30th, the moon is at perigee, which is the point in the moon's orbit that is closest to the Earth at a distance of 357,181 kilometers. And on August the 30th is the second full moon in the month of August. This is often called, in other words, the second full moon in the same month, is often called a blue moon. A blue moon only happens about once every 3 years. The last blue moon was on October the 31st, the year 2020. And if you have a full moon on October the 31st, it's always going to be a blue moon because it'll be the second full moon of that month. Slide Master, slide number 3, please. On August the 28th, in the early morning eastern sky, the asteroid Vesta and the Crab Nebula, also known as Messier Object Number 1, will be only about 2 degrees apart from each other. A pair of binoculars were all that required to really observe both of them if you're outside the city. Now, inside the city, it'll be difficult to see the Crab Nebula, but with a good finder map and computer software, you should be able to see Vesta with just a pair of binoculars. I've observed Vesta from inside the city. Yes, with binoculars. Slide Master, slide number 4, please. At the beginning of August and now at the end of August, on August the 30th, the moon and the planet Saturn will be found in conjunction in the southern sky just after midnight. Remember that August 30th is also the blue moon. Slide number 5. Remember that we have 2 solar eclipses coming up very soon. The solar eclipse is when the moon is in between the Earth and the sun. And for a very few, well, at least a few, lucky people on the Earth, the moon blocks some or all of the sun from their field of view. Interesting. Slide Master, slide number 6. On October the 14th, the eclipse is a partial annular solar eclipse for us here in North Texas. But along a path in West Texas and into New Mexico, there's a path that the moon will block out all but just a ring or annulus of sunlight from our view. The eclipse begins around 10:30, that's your local time, and the middle of the eclipse is around 11:52 a.m., yes, just before noon. About 81% of the sun is covered up by the moon at that point. The eclipse ends at 1:29 p.m. Now, those are all times for Brookhaven campus. They're going to change by a few minutes one way or another depending on where you live in North Texas. Slide Master, slide number 7, please. On April the 8th, 2024, is a total solar eclipse for us in North Texas. From the Brookhaven campus, the sun will be completely blocked out for about 3 minutes and 20 seconds between 1:41 p.m. and 1:44 p.m. Now, during that time, called totality, you'll be able to see stars in the sky, just as if it were evening twilight. Now, the next total solar eclipse visible from North Texas will be in the year 2317 on July the 9th. So this total eclipse is a very big deal because this only happens about once every 300 years in North Texas. I think Kelly reported to us a couple of weeks ago that there was one in Fort Worth, I think in 1878, if I remember right. And this is KF5 JHA, and this is Skynet. Slide Master, slide number 8, please. And once again, the Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas Club meeting will be held on Friday, August the 25th. That's in 6 days, and the meeting will be held at 7:30 p.m. in person at the University of Texas at Dallas, and also held on Zoom. The featured speaker is from the University of Houston, Dr. Mahana Malia. That's probably close to his name. I hope I got it sort of right this time. His topic is going to be about astrobiology. And Saturday night at public observing stations have begun, but tonight at Cedar Hill was canceled because of the heat. And I looked that up. I believe the record was 108 today. 109 the last couple of days, but only 108 today. What a cool down. All right, you can check the Texas Astronomy Society of Dallas website at texasastro.org for up-to-date information and details about meetings and public observing stations. Now, Slide Master, slide number 9. Do any of you out there in Radio Land have any question about astronomy? Come now with your call sign if you have a question or need a fill.
This is WB50ZL with a question.
Why, that's Miss Net Control. What question do you have?
Is it possible to have a blue moon in February, especially a 28-day February?
Unfortunately, you can never have a blue moon in February, even on a February with 29 days, because it's 29 and a half days from full moon to the next full moon, so it'll never happen. What's interesting is you could have a blue moon in January. That would be a full moon at the end of January. No full moon in February, but then 2 full moons in March, so you could have a blue moon at the end of January and a blue moon at the end of March. Now, that doesn't happen very often. That's, I think it's about 17, 18 years apart when that happens. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
I'm so glad we've got some good questions tonight. All right, thank you, Brenda. Slide Master, slide number 10, please. So, as the moon waned last week, so do these words for the segment of Skynet. Stay safe, keep well, pray for our world. It's the only one where humans live, at least right now. And until next time, actually, I'll be doing another Skynet segment in a few minutes. Keep looking up so you know what's up. And this is KF5 JHA Backdoor Net Control. It's all yours, Brenda.
Thank you, Chaz. That was very interesting. Okay, our next segments are space exploration. Well, what we have is news, history, and birthdays. And KE5ICX has volunteered. This is my trifecta night where it just happens to hit that way, where I do all of these things. Next week I'll have almost nothing to do, but he was afraid that my voice might give out. Tom was, KE5ICX, and offered to read some stuff for me, and I'm going to take him up on it. And so he's going to read news and history, and I think I'll read the birthdays. So go ahead, Tom. Take it away with the, it starts with news.
All right, thank you, Brenda. Space exploration and space history, section 6 of our DAP. And Brenda put all this together tonight. So here we go. And she says the following. This is from, what is it from? I'm not sure what it's from, but it's from a news article. It says NASA's selected Rocket Lab to launch a pair of CubeSats in 2024 to monitor energy entering and exiting the polar regions of the planet. NASA announced on August 14th it awarded a task order through its Venture Class Acquisition of Dedicated and Rideshare, or VADR, isn't that interesting, contract to Rocket Lab for the launch of 2 6U CubeSats for the polar radiant energy in the Far Infrared Experiment, or pre-fire mission. They go to incredible lengths to come up with these interesting acronyms. Next up is Luna 25 was designated the Luna Club lander, is the Russian lunar lander mission that launched on August 10th of this year, is targeted to the south polar region of the moon. There are 2 primary scientific objectives of the mission: to study the composition of the polar regolith and to study the plasma and dust components of the lunar polar exosphere. It is scheduled to land on the moon on August 21st. There's a recent update, and this did come in this afternoon. Russia's Luna 25 moon lander suffers the emergency situation, in quotes, in lunar orbit. The Luna 25 spacecraft was supposed to maneuver itself into its final pre-landing orbit around the moon today, ahead of the touchdown attempt on Monday, August 21st or thereabouts. But the probe encountered a problem during the engine burn. His quote, during the operation, an emergency situation occurred on board the automatic station, which did not allow the maneuver to be performed with the specified parameters. Russian Space Agency Roscosmos wrote in an update on Telegram today. That's the Russian site. The management team is currently analyzing the situation, is what it says. Next up, U.S. government warns of foreign intelligence threats to the space agency. Companies in the U.S. space industry are being increasingly targeted by foreign intelligence operations, U.S. intelligence agencies warn. Foreign intelligence entities recognize the importance of commercial space industry to the U.S. economy and national security, including growing independence or dependence of critical infrastructure on space-based assets, said a bulletin published on August 18th by the National Counterintelligence and Security Center, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. It's generally known that China and Russia are among the leading foreign intelligence threats to the U.S. space industry. But other nations are also targeting this sector, and U.S. counterintelligence officials said in a statement to Space News. Some countries see U.S. space-related innovation and assets as potential threats, as well as valuable opportunities to acquire vital technologies and expertise, the bulletin warned. Foreign intelligence agencies use cyber attacks and strategic investment, including joint ventures and acquisitions and other techniques to gain access to U.S. space industry, says the bulletin. That's it for me, Brenda. Over to you for birthdays from KE5I6.
Thank you very much. We have a whole slew of birthdays this week. We got Robert L. Stewart, born August 17, 1952. He flew on STS-41B and STS-51J. We have John McBride, born August 14th, STS-41G, STS-61E, which he never flew. Then Mark C. Lee, August 14th, 1952, flew on STS-30, 47, 64, and 82. We have Tracy Caldwell Dyson, August 14th, 1969, STS-118, Soyuz TMA-18, Expedition 2324, Soyuz MS-25, Expedition 7071. Next, Sonny Carter, August 15th, 1947, flew on STS-33. Scott Altman, August 15th, 1959, STS-90, 106, 109, and 125. Stuart Roosa, August 16th, 1933, flew on Apollo 14. Peter Wissoff, August 16th, 1958, flew on STS-57, 68, 81, and 92. Catherine C. Thornton, August 16th, 1952, STS-33, 49, 61, and 73. Thomas J. Hennon, August 17th, 1952, flew on STS-44. Mike Mazzarino, August 19th, 1962, STS-109 and 125. Charles Bolden, August 19th, 1946, flew STS-61C, STS-31, 45, and 60. and also he was the former NASA administrator. Story Musgrave, August 19th, 1935, STS-6, 51F, 33, 44, 61, and 80. And a special mission to Gene Kranz, who was born August 17th, 1933. He was NASA's second chief flight director, directing missions of the Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo programs, including the first 4 lunar mission, Apollo 11. And he just published a new book called Tough and Competent, and boy, he is. Without him, I don't know where we would be with Apollo. Next up, we got our history segment. Going to ask on Tom, KE5ICX, to pick this up again. Go ahead, Tom.
And thank you, Brenda. This is KE5ICX. So, for history, we have Explorer 6 from August 14, 1959. It took its first photo of Earth taken from a satellite. It transmitted this image of a sunlit portion of the North Central Pacific Ocean. I will tell you, there isn't much to the picture, but it was the first. Next up, on August 13, 1972, Explorer 46 was launched from Wallops Station in Virginia to study meteoroids and micrometeoroid strikes in low Earth orbit, according to the National Air and Space Museum. 20 meteoroid impacts were recorded by the bumper panels through December of 1972. A set of capacitor detectors recorded over 2,000 micrometeoroid hits over the same period. This backup was rebuilt by technicians at NASA's Langley Research Center, transferred to the NASA in July of 1976, and that's the picture that they're referencing. This is a backup that would have been used if the other had failed. Next up is discovery of phobos. Let's do this again. On August 17, 1877, American astronomer Asaph Hill discovered Mars' moon, Phobos. While was working at the U.S. Naval Observatory in Washington, D.C., and looking through a 26-inch refractor telescope, which was then the largest in the world, when he first spotted the moon 6 days earlier, he had discovered another smaller moon that he had first described as a faint star near Mars. On further inspection, not only did he realize this star was actually the Martian moon Deimos, but he also discovered a second larger moon now known as Phobos. He announced both discoveries the following day on August 18th. Back to you, Brenda, KE5ICX.
Thank you so much for reading that. This is WB50ZL. Do we have any more check-ins? Very well. We're going to call on Chaz again, KF5JHA, and he's going to present Ms. Carolyn's Constellation of the Week. Go ahead, Chaz.
Thank you, Brenda, and welcome, Shane. Hey, from Blue Springs. I just see him pop up on Echolink. All right. Slide Master, slide number 11. Miss Carolyn's Constellation of the Week is named in honor of Silent Key Carolyn, KC50ZT. Carolyn contributed to Skynet each week, almost from its beginning in 2012 until May of 2019, with a detailed look at one particular constellation each week. Since there are about 52 easily visible constellations seen in Texas throughout the year out of the 88 total constellations, so Miss Carolyn covered the entire sky seen over North Texas in a year. In her honor, we've continued that tradition of a constellation per week and named this segment after her. So Miss Carolyn's Constellation of the Week this week is a double. Scutum the Shield and Corona Australiana, or Australis, I've seen it both ways written down, which is this Southern Crown. Now these two constellations, the Southern Crown and the Shield, are north and south of Sagittarius. So the Southern Crown is south of Sagittarius and the Shield is north of Sagittarius. Since they both have the Milky Way running through them, they have a wide variety of different objects to observe. Corona Australis, the Southern Crown, was also known to the Greeks as their wreath. Corona Australis is also a circlet of stars near the forefeet of the centaur Sagittarius. The Southern Crown is also one of the smallest constellations in the sky, only the 80th in size. It occupies an area of 128 square degrees. Now, Scutum, the shield, is one of the more modern constellations. It was created in 1684 by another astronomer, Johannes Elvilus, who named it the Shield. This was to honor his patron king, John III Sobieski of Poland. Scutum is the only modern constellation introduced for a political reason. It is the fifth smallest constellation in the sky and is the 84th constellation in size, occupying only an area of 109 square degrees. Slide Master, slide number 12, what everyone's been waiting for all night long, the jokes of the week. Okay, so let me see. You can boo or hiss if you'd like, either one. Just respond, if you're not asleep. I hope you're not asleep. Okay, here we go. Now, they're usually related to at least one or two of the constellations I expect with the shield, so let's go after this. You've got to say, I'm a big fan of shields. Why? They're really something you can get behind. Oh, I'm bothering Bob the cat on beside the computer. He doesn't like me talking so much. What do you call the Hulk when he picks up the Captain America shield? The Star-Spangled Banner. If you don't know the Marvel Universe, you don't get it. Where does a Wonder Woman get her shield from? Well, where most of us get a lot of things from. Amazon, of course. Oh, come on, that was funny. Why did the king go to the dentist? Oh, to get his teeth crowned. Oh, now we did switch to a crown, didn't we? Okay. Did you hear about the newborn baby? It was its first crowning achievement. Oh, so I did cover both constellations, didn't I? Slide Master, slide number 13. I'd like to talk about one constellation in the Southern Crown. Alpha Corona Australis is a Class A2V star with an apparent magnitude of 4.1. It is 130 light years in distance. It is the only named star in that constellation. It got its name after Alphaca, the brightest star in the northern constellation of Corona Borealis. Okay. Slide Master, slide number 14. Corona Australis Nebula is the bright reflection nebula, about 420 light years in distance, formed by several different bright stars caught up in a dark cloud of dust. The cloud is a star-forming region with clusters of young stars embedded within it. Wow. It consists of three nebulous regions, NGC 6726, NGC 6727, and NGC 6729. The molecular cloud complex in the region is one of the nearest areas with recent or ongoing intermediate and low mass star formations to us. Slide Master, slide number 15. The Coronet cluster is located some 420 light years from the Earth, and it stretches about 10 light years across. The Coronet cluster is a relatively loose cluster of only a few dozen stars, many of which are only a few million years old. It is one of the nearest known regions of ongoing star formation. Well, perhaps it's not quite as well known, but as its cousins, the Orion Nebula, the Corona Australis region, containing the heart of the Coronet cluster, is one of the nearest and most active regions of ongoing star formation. Slide Master, slide number 16. Let's go to the next constellation. Alpha Scuti, the brightest star in the constellation of the Shield. It is the orange giant with a stellar classification of K23. It is an apparent magnitude of 3.85 and is approximately 174 light years distance from the Earth. The star used to belong to Aquila, the constellation of Aquila, and was previously designated as 1 Aquilae. It's also known as a variable star, with its brightness varying from about 10% to more than it's varying by 10%. It's 132 times more luminous than our sun and has a mass of 1.7 times the mass of our sun. It is believed to be about 2 billion years old. Our sun is about 5 billion years old. Slide master, slide number 17, please. M11. Yeah, a lot of people associate that with Aquila the Eagle, but it's not. It's sort of at the tail of the eagle, but it's in Scutum, the Shield. M11 was discovered in 1631 by Gottfried Kirch of the Berlin Observatory. He could not resolve it into individual stars. Its true stellar nature was not discovered until 1732 by William Durham of England. In 1844, renowned British astronomer William Smythe described M11 as a flight of wild ducks in shape. The name stuck. It looks like a V-shaped group of stars, yeah. M11 is easily found in binoculars and a finder scope. In smaller scopes, the cluster has a triangular or V shape, forming the Admiral Smythe's flock of wild ducks. The 8th magnitude star at the apex of the V is not a cluster member, but a foreground star. Think of it as the lead duck. Slide master, slide number 18, please. Messier object number 26 is a small, loose, open cluster. It's quite a contrast with M11, as M26 is much more sparsely populated and noticeably smaller than M11. Robert Burnham noted that Admiral Smith's description of M26 as a coarse but bright cluster of stars in a fine, condensed part of the Milky Way just about sums it up. As a whole, the constellation of Scutum is taken up by the Scutum star cloud. It's the brightest part of the Milky Way outside of Sagittarius. And this is KF5, JHA, and this is Skynet. There are a lot more astronomical league. Oh, this is slide number 19. There are a lot more astronomical league observing program objects in the constellation of Scutum, the Shield, and Corona Australis, the Southern Crown. I've just given you a sampling of some of those objects. The Astronomical League has, at last count, 77 different observing programs, most of which have about 100 objects. Now, if you observe just 10 different objects in an observing program each month, then you can earn an observing certificate and a pen in about a year. And Slide Master, slide number 20, that is Miss Carolyn's constellations of the week, Scutum the Shield and Corona Australis, the Southern Crown. I want to thank my friends Dave Hutchinson and Dennis Harwell for their research and words on deep sky objects that I've used, borrow, and steal for every Skynet. I also at times use the website constellation-guide.com for information. Now, next week, we'll take a look at Aquila the Eagle. We talked about it just briefly just a minute ago, but we'll talk about it in more detail next week. And this is KF5, JHA, sending it back to our net control. Brenda, it's all back to you. 73, everyone. Have a great rest of the weekend.
Okay, thank you, Chaz. Next up, space launches for this week. Okay, ask Tom, KE5ICX, to present those for us.
And thank you, Brenda. This is KE5ICX. So we've got a bunch of launches. Of course, we always do every week, right? Half of them are Falcon 9 launches, and this is no exception. Starting with August 21st, 22nd, overnight, Falcon 9 launched Starlink 7-1. This will be from Vandenberg Space Force Base, California. Falcon 9 rocket will launch another batch of second-generation Starlink V2 mini internet satellites. The Falcon 9 first stage booster will land on a drone ship. Of course, I still love you in the Pacific Ocean. August 23rd will be a Soyuz Progress 85P flight from Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. It will launch the 85th Progress cargo delivery ship to the International Space Station. The rocket will fly in the Soyuz 2.1A configuration. August 23rd, 24th overnight will be a launch from New Zealand. This is from the Mahia Peninsula in Launch Complex 1 in New Zealand. The Rocket Lab Electron rocket will set to launch the first of Capella Space Next Generation Synthetic Aperture Radar, SAR, Earth imaging satellites called Acadia. It will be the first launch of these 4 new satellites. The mission is dubbed We Love the Nightlife, since the SAR satellite allow for high-resolution imagery at night. The mission will launch from Rocket Lab's Launch Complex 1, which I mentioned earlier. Then we have another Falcon 9. This one's a manned flight, Launch Complex 39A at Kennedy Space Center on August 25th. The Falcon 9 rocket will launch a Crew Dragon spacecraft on the program's 12th flight with astronauts. Falcon 9 first stage booster will return to land at Launch Landing Zone 1 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. NASA astronauts Jasmine Belli, ESA astronaut Andreas Morgensen, JAXA astronaut Satoshi Furukawa, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Konstantin Borisov will launch on Crew Dragon spacecraft named Endurance to begin a 6-month expedition to the International Space Station. Crew Dragon will return to a splashdown at sea. Then August 25th, 26th, Launch Pad 1 in Takashima Space Center in Japan will launch an X-ray imaging and spectroscopy mission, or XRISM, a joint project between Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency and NASA. XRISM is a replacement for the Hatomi X-ray Astrophysics Observatory, which failed about 1 month after launch in 2016. XRISM will perform high-resolution X-ray spectroscopic observation of hot plasma that flows through the galaxies in the universe. These observations will enable us to determine flows of mass and energy, revealing the composition and evolution of celestial objects. JAXA's Smart Lander for investigating Moon, or SLIM, mission will fly as a rideshare on this flight, heading to the Moon to test precision landing technologies. The H-2A rocket will fly in the 202 configuration with 2 strap-on solid rocket boosters. August 29th, from SLC-41, Cape Canaveral, will be a United Launch Alliance Atlas V rocket will launch NROL 107 for the National Reconnaissance Office. The mission will launch a classified payload known as Silent Barker. The mission is a partnership between NRO and the U.S. Space Force, which discloses little information about the payload, other than it will focus on a satellite threat intelligence and space situational awareness. Then we have Worldview Legion 1 and 2, which, to be determined, will launch from SLC-4E at Vandenberg. This will be the first pair of Worldview Legion Earth observation satellites for Maxar Technologies. They plan to deploy 6 commercial Worldview Legion high-resolution remote sensing satellites into a mix of sun-synchronous and mid-inclination orbits on 3 SpaceX Falcon 9 rockets. Then, let's see, another Falcon 9, O3B, M-Power 5 and 6 will launch from SLC-40 Cape Canaveral Space Force, date to be determined. This will be broadband internet satellites in medium Earth orbit for SES of Luxembourg. Then we have a launch Falcon 9 SDA Drake 0B. This will launch from SLC-4E Vandenberg Space Force Base. Is a demonstration satellite to the U.S. Military Space Development Agency. The launch is the second of 2 Falcon 9 missions to carry SDA demonstration spacecraft to the future constellation as a future constellation of military missile tracking and data relay satellites. And then finally, Worldview Legion 3 and 4 will launch from Vandenberg Space Force Base in Florida. Date to be determined launch a second pair of Whirlpool Legion Earth observation satellites from Maxter and Maxter Technologies. They plan to deploy 6 commercial Worldview Legion high-resolution remote sensing satellites into a mix of sun-synchronous and mid-inclination orbit. Sound familiar? That's because I read you Legion 1 and 2 just earlier. And that's it, Brenda. Back to you. This is KE5ICX.
All right. Well, thank you so much. This is WB50ZL. Do we have any new check-ins?
KI5 KWG, cruise in Arlington.
Very good. We got
T0, Mike Bravo Charlie Shane.
And back to me, Bruce Shane. Hi, Dallas. And astronomical discoveries. And this is an article from Science Daily entitled Using Supernovae to Study Neutrinos' Strange Properties. In a new study, researchers have taken an important step toward understanding how exploding stars can help reveal how neutrinos, mysterious subatomic particles, secretly interact with themselves. One of the less well-understood elementary particles, neutrinos, rarely interact with normal matter and instead travel invisibly through it at almost the speed of light. These ghostly particles outnumber all the atoms in the universe and are always passing harmlessly through our bodies. But due to their low mass and lack of an electric charge, they can be incredibly difficult to find and study. But in a study published today in the journal Physical Review Letters, researchers at The Ohio State University have established a new framework detailing how supernovae, massive explosions that herald the death of collapsing stars, can be used as powerful tools to study how neutrino self-interactions can cause vast cosmological changes in the universe. Neutrinos only have very small rates of interaction with typical matter, so it's difficult to detect them and test any of their properties, said Po-Wen Chang, lead author of the study and a graduate student in physics at Ohio State. That's why we have to use astrophysics and cosmology to discover interesting phenomena about them. Thought to have been important to the formation of the early universe, neutrinos are still puzzling to scientists, despite having learned that they originate from a number of sources, such as in nuclear reactions or the insides of dying stars. But by calculating how self-interactions would affect the neutrino signal from supernova 1987A, the nearest supernova observed in modern times, researchers found that when neutrinos do interact with themselves, they form a tightly coupled fluid that expands under relativistic hydrodynamics, a branch of physics that deals with how flows impact solid objects in one of two different ways. In the case of what's called burst-out flow, the team theorizes that much like popping a highly pressurized balloon in the vacuum of space will push energy outward, a burst produces a neutrino fluid that moves in all directions. The second case, described as a wind outflow, imagines a highly pressurized balloon with many nozzles wherein neutrinos escape at a more constant flow rate, similar to a jet of steady wind. While the wind outflow theory is more likely to take place in nature, said Chang, if the burst case is realized, scientists could see new observable neutrino signatures emitted from supernovae, allowing unprecedented sensitivity to neutrino self-interactions. One of the reasons it's so vital to understand these mechanisms is that if neutrinos are acting as a fluid, that means they're acting together as a collective. And if the properties of neutrinos are different as a collective than individually, then the physics of supernovae could experience changes too. But whether these changes are due solely to the burst case or the outflow case remains to be seen. The dynamics of supernovae are complicated, but this result is promising because with relativistic hydrodynamics, we know there's a fork in the road in understanding how they work now, said Chang. Still, further research needs to be done before scientists can cross off the possibility of the burst case happening inside supernovae as well. Despite these uncertainties, the study is a huge milestone in answering the decades-old astrophysical issue of how neutrinos actually scatter when ejected from supernovae, said John Beacom, the co-author of the study and professor of physics and astronomy at Ohio State. The study found that in the burst case, unprecedented sensitivity to neutrino self-interactions is possible in sparse neutrino data from SN 1987A and conservative analysis assumptions. This problem has lain basically untouched for 35 years, said Beacom. So even though we were not able to completely solve how neutrinos affect supernovae, what they're excited about is that we were able to make a substantial step forward. Down the road, the team hopes their work will be used as a stepping stone to further investigate the neutrino self-interactions. Yet because only about 2 or 3 supernovae happen per century in the Milky Way, it's likely researchers will have to wait decades more to collect enough new neutrino data to prove their ideas. We're always praying for another galactic supernova to happen somewhere and soon, but the best we can do is try to build on what we know as much as possible before it happens, said Chang. This is from Science Daily. Okay, next up. Stand by. I gotta go back to my other document. Please hold.
KF5JHA.
KF5JHA, go ahead.
Yes, you doubled with somebody on Echolink that wanted to check in. W0MBC Shane from Blue Springs. Bethany also checked in with him as well. This is KF5JJ.
Would you tell me his call again, please?
His call sign is Whiskey 0 Mike Bravo Charlie. Whiskey 0 Mike Bravo Charlie. Shane, Blue Springs.
Thank you very much. I did not hear him. W0 Mike Bravo Charlie, Shane, and hopefully Bethany is there as well. Welcome to the net tonight. Okay, let's see, what is next? Visible satellite passages over the next couple of days. And we have Tom, would you like to take that? KE5ICX.
Brenda, I cannot do it this evening. There's a problem with the website, so but I can give you Catherine KB8DAA. She tried to check in over on Echolink, but can't get into Echolink. I'll have to check in and see. I think it has reset itself to just a maximum of 10. And that's how many we got. That's probably why she cannot get in. But she did manage to get in over on YouTube. So I'll give you that. Back to you, KE5ICX.
Good, Catherine. KB8EAA, welcome to the net. I'm sorry, it says KB8DAA. My apologies. Well, we're pretty much out of time anyway, so let's see what else we need to do. Okay. Anybody with questions, remarks, comments?
November 5, Bravo, Bravo.
N5BB, go ahead, Bill.
This is N5BB. I have a short announcement I forgot to make earlier. National Space Society sponsors a social event on the last Friday of every month. And that's coming up this coming Friday. It's going to be what we call the Space Rendezvous. As before, we're having it at the 54th Street Restaurant and Draft House. This is a restaurant in Irving on Highway 635, maybe a mile west of MacArthur on the north side of Highway 635. It'll start at 6 p.m. this coming Friday, August the 25th. So if you want to come over and have a drink and a little food or something, or happy hour there, come on over. You can find out more by sending me a message, n5bb@arrl.net. Thank you, N5BB.
Well, that sounds like fun. Thank you, Bill. Okay, tonight we had 27. It's a goodly amount. 27 hams participating on the air. Thanks to all who checked in this evening. We hope you'll join us here next week and every Saturday night at 9 p.m. to discuss astronomy, space, and space exploration. On this net, the sky is never the limit. We're always looking for net control stations for this and all other DARC nets. If you'd like to try your hand at this, contact any of the net controls by sending an email to nets@w5fc.org. You can follow topics and discussion about this net and astronomy in general on Facebook and Twitter, as well as our audio and video streams, video archives, and other useful internet resources by going to w5fc.org at the conclusion of this net. So until next Saturday night, this is WB5OZL, Brenda, and I'll be closing the net at 10 p.m. local, returning the repeater to normal amateur use. 72, everybody, and enjoy Discover the Universe. But wait, we have Afterglow coming up soon. K5 ICX, tell us when to be back here.
Hey, Brenda, the usual will be back in about 5 minutes. 5 minutes. KE5 ICX.
That's right. Greatest movie of all time, 2001, A Space Odyssey. Very excited. Good night.
KI5ZOE with a question.
KI5COE, who is your question for?
All right, this is in reference to something Chaz said earlier in the Southern Crown. He was talking about a nebula that was giving birth to stars, and I believe he said that they were of lower, relatively lower mass. And that made me wonder, do nebula typically produce stars of a certain class? Like, could we expect that billions of years ago, the mother cloud that created our sun had other stars birthed that were also yellow stars? That was what I was wondering. KI5ZOE.
KF5JHA. Against the net ended. Yeah, let me tell you, usually nebulas are going to produce a lot of different mass stars. They'll typically form a lot of smaller mass stars compared to the larger mass stars. So we usually get a lot of them that are really small, tiny. They're little small red ones. And we estimate that those are the most numerous numbers of stars there are in our galaxy anyway. And the very large stars, there's very few of them. And there's even fewer of them because they last a very short amount of time. But the very small little red stars can last maybe trillions of years. KF5JHA. Well, I hope that answered your question. This is KF5JJ. I'll be listening for another minute or two, and then it's bedtime for me. Everyone have a great night on the really great movie 2001 Space Odyssey. Like I said, it's a hell of a movie. Come on, that was funny, wasn't it?
Chaz, somebody doubled with you in the first part of your previous transmission. Just wanted to let you know. Good evening, and 5BB cleared.
Oh, okay. Maybe it was in regards to when I was talking about there's large and small mass stars and everything in between that are formed out of gas and dust clouds. And primarily there's a lot of small mass stars compared to the larger mass stars that are formed. KF5JHA.
Alright, this is Tom, KE5ICX, and it's time for the Afterglow Movie Net. Want to mention and thank another individual who has come forward and said they would be willing to do net control. So I'm going to start doing that probably next week. Thank you very much for doing that. That'll give me an opportunity to take some time off and enjoy just being a participant. But what was interesting is that this week's movie happened to come out of nowhere, just like a monolith, and was available on Tubi for free. It's only up there for 2 weeks. You've only got 2 or 3 days left to go see it if you haven't seen it already, or rewatch it like most of us did. Nice copy, by the way. It's 2 hours and 20 minutes long, so it's a long movie. I suspect if you haven't seen it recently, you do still remember most of the details. But thanks to, I forget who it was. Was it, I think it was Cruz who mentioned that it was available. So we did a little shuffle and put them up. Put up 2001 for this week before it disappeared. So let me give you a little bit of a synopsis, and then we'll go into our usual thing. This one, probably I'll just do some of the interesting details off of Wiki. It says it's a 1968 epic science fiction film produced and directed by Stanley Kubrick, screenplay was written by Kubrick, and science fiction author Arthur C. Clarke was inspired by Clarke's 1951 short story, The Sentinel, and other short stories by Clarke. Clarke also published a novelization of the film. In fact, that's how it was produced. He actually was writing the novelization, and Stanley Kubrick converted it over into the screenplay. Part written concurrently with the screenplay. There you go. After the film's release, the film stars Claire DeLay, Carrie Lockwood, William Sylvester, and Douglas Rain, and follows the voyage by astronaut scientists and a sentient supercomputer HAL to Jupiter to investigate the alien monolith. The film is noted for its scientifically accurate depiction of spaceflight, pioneering special effects, and ambiguous imagery. Kubrick avoided conventional cinematic and narrative techniques. Dialogue is used sparingly, and there are long sequences accompanied only by music. The soundtrack incorporates numerous works of classical music, including pieces by composers Richard Strauss, Johann Strauss II, Arim Khachaturian, and Georgi Ligeti. The film received diverse critical responses, ranging from those who saw it as darkly apocalyptic to those who saw it as an optimistic reappraisal of the hopes of humanity, technology, artificial intelligence, and the possibility of extraterrestrial life. It was nominated for 4 Academy Awards, winning Kubrick the award for his direction of the visual effects. The film is now widely regarded as one of the greatest and most influential films ever made. In 1991, it was selected by the United States Library of Congress for preservation in the National Film Registry. In 2022, 2001: A Space Odyssey placed in the top 10 of Sight and Sound's decennial critics poll and topped their directors poll. Okay. Oh, and by the way, who was it? Well, never mind. I can't remember right now. It's in my head, and then it went away. I'll think of it eventually. But let's go ahead and get started. What we will do is take check-ins. You'll have an opportunity to check in with your call sign, your name, if you want to, where you are located, but more importantly, did you see the film? I have a suspicion just about everybody who's checking in will have seen this film at least once in their lives, probably many. But in case you haven't, you might be in for a surprise. Then we will go through and talk about the plot, followed by the acting, and followed by special effects, music, and other technical features of the film. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. I will take check-ins. If you'd like to join us, please come with your call, your name, and did you see 2001: A Space Odyssey from 1968. Let's begin, shall we?
November, Victor 5, Foxtrot, Virginia, in Fort Worth. I have seen this movie a bunch of times.
Whiskey 9, Victor Papa Uniform, Sam and Alan. I have seen the movie about a year ago.
November, Tango 5, Tango Mike. Tony in Dallas. Yes, I've seen the movie.
Whiskey Bravo 5, Oscar Zulu Lima, Brenda in Dallas now. Yes, I've seen it many times.
All right, let me go ahead and get, I will go to Echolink. I see some folks there too, but let me start at the top. I've got NV5F, Virginia and Fort Worth. Yep, she saw the film. W9VPU, Sam, welcome, Sam, over in Allen. Yep, he saw the film. NT5TM, Tony in Dallas. Yes, he saw the film. WV50ZL, Brenda in Dallas. Yes, she saw the film. Additional check-ins, please come now.
This is Kilo India 5 Zulu Oscar Echo, Tommy from Bald Springs, and I both saw the film and I read the book way back in, I think it was the 70s. KF5ZLE.
Kilo India 5, Kilo Whiskey Golf, cruise in Arlington. Yep, I saw it.
Very good. We picked up two more. We've got KI5ZOE, that's Tommy in Bald Springs. Yes, he saw the film. And KI5KWG, cruise in Arlington. Yes, he saw the film. I'll allow Echolink. Go over to Echolink. I see usual suspect over there. So if you're over on Echolink and like to join us, please come with your call sign, name, and did you see 2001? Oh well, it's still. I think he'll show up later on. He may just check in on over voice. Let's see. I'll go ahead and take any additional check-ins now with your call sign, your name, and did you see 2001: A Space Odyssey? All right, well, that's fine. Let's go ahead and get started then. We'll start at the top. We'll talk about the plot. So I'll go down the list. I think this should be pretty straightforward. NB5F, Virginia, you're first on the runway. What did you think about the plot for 2001? And maybe as a kind of a sidelight, you may have seen this film many years ago. Has your opinion changed since you saw it originally? Did the movie get better or worse? That might be kind of interesting as well. Your observations as we talk about the plot in this case might yield some further wisdom as you've been around a little bit longer on this earth. So Virginia, go ahead, your comments.
Okay, well, I really didn't want to be first, but somebody has to be first. I noticed everybody waits, so I'm first. Golly, I saw this movie for the first time when I was pretty young and really excited about science fiction and space travel, and I think it's, for me, I think it's gotten better with time, because I think that when I was younger, I really got involved with it through the sequel, which had come out at the theater. I went and saw that at the theater. I had seen this a couple years before that and didn't get it at all. And then I remember when I figured out that 2010 was the sequel to this, then I went and watched 2001 and became pretty obsessed with it because of the causality of, them kind of talking about in 2010 what had happened, why things happened the way they happened, and what was really going on in 2001. So I sort of had that in my mind when I saw 2001. So my thoughts on it were always kind of affected by that. And I did read the book when I was younger as well, read it many times, read the sequel book many times. Pretty good. I think the book, though, when you read that, kind of betrays the fact that they had this really great idea from the Sentinel, like, there's these people who are on the verge of evolving into humans, and they just need like a push, and this thing comes to Earth and you know, and kind of helps them along, has some effect on them. Their you know, affects their intellect in some way, and gives them kind of the intellectual leg up that they need to survive as they figure out how to hunt and kill animals for food, and at the same time there's this sort of loss of innocence, and I guess that's kind of what the plot seems to, you know, have going through it, and then this thing leaves a copy of itself or whatever on the moon, or maybe it parks itself there, and that's how it knows that its work has been effective. So, you know, so cut to these people traveling to the moon to talk to, you know, the plot about the rumor about the thing discovered on the moon, and that causing some suspicions and political tension, and you know, I thought that was all very timely when the movie came out in 1968, and it was also timely in 1984 when the sequel came out, and not so much today, but we still have those things going on with Russia, even in the space station. So I'm probably getting a little off the subject. I'm really tired, but I thought the plot was pretty well crafted, and we were discussing last night, as everyone has discussed for the last, golly, how many years now, 60 years or whatever, however old this movie is. Everybody's still discussing 55 years, I guess, is how old this movie is. They're all discussing why the computer, kind of lost it and started acting strangely, and then ended up, you know, basically killing everyone in the crew except Dave. He tried to kill Dave, but Dave outsmarted him and disconnected him, and then I think the end of the plot where Dave makes it to Jupiter and carries out the mission because he finally discovers the reason Hal was, he didn't realize it, but you know, he does find out about the monolith on the moon to send a signal to Jupiter, and now they've found another one at Jupiter, and Dave, all by his lonesome, goes out to investigate, and then goes through this total acid trip, and ends up being, you know, kind of sort of put through his paces, I guess, by these aliens that never really show who they are. And in the novel, that's where things got kind of a little bit fuzzy and out of focus for me when I was reading the book, and they kind of do in the movie too. It's just kind of like, okay, how do we end this thing? Okay, let's have him, like, you know, go through this crazy trans-dimensional thing, and we don't know where he ends up, but then somehow he's reborn and looking down on Earth from the perspective of the guys who brought man to this point, I guess. And it's all real crazy and very late 60s, but it holds up, and I still find it interesting, and a lot of times I'll just put this movie on to just have it on because it's something I'm used to, and I can really, like, dig into it, or I can just watch it and enjoy the visuals, which we'll definitely talk about later, enjoy the music, enjoy the familiarity of it. It's something that goes all the way back to when I was a kid. And sometimes I just laugh at it because there are some things in it that are really funny because they actually were pretty spot on. They were a little early with their timing, but, you know, we're getting to that point, you know, where we've got these people wanting to launch space liners and put up, put up space stations, and we've got AI, starting to run the show, and it you see this stuff and you go, wow, this is kind of starting to come true. It's a few years later than they thought, but and I love the, God, I'm trying not to talk about stuff I want to talk about later, but anyway, that's my very Kubrick-esque attempt at making clear the plot of 2001, which I talked in circles, and it was probably just as mysterious and ambiguous as the plot of 2001 itself, but I think if you watch it enough times, you really get it. You really start to see what's going on, and of course, as I've gotten older, I've definitely noticed the subtleties, and I'm not as quote-unquote bored with the slow parts as I used to be when I was a kid, but I was fairly obsessed with this movie, and it is definitely an all-time favorite for me. I will now stop talking. KE5 ICX, this is NV5F.
All right, you said, well, I don't want to be first because, I got to talk about it. Well, you seem to do just fine. It helps when you got decent material to discuss. The hard part is when, well, maybe not so hard. Maybe the middle of the road movies are the ones that are really hard, where the plot is non-existent, the acting is terrible, and the special effects aren't very special. When it's a terrible film, you can sit there and just see where it went off the tracks and blew up in a flaming, explosion. And really good films are easy to talk about because there's so many good things you can say. So maybe it's our middle-of-the-road mediocre films that nobody wants to really step up and talk about, because it's easy once you got one of these, like 2001. Okay, next up is Sam. Sam's new for us, I think. W9VPU, Sam, over in Allen. I hope you're still there. What are your impressions of 2001: A Space Odyssey? You saw it, I think you said just last year, and probably before that too. But what do you think about, in this case, the plot? And do you have any observations of maybe having seen it over the past 60 years from KE5 ICX?
Well, hello to everyone on the net. This is W9GPU. Well, as I had previously mentioned, it has been about a year since I watched the movie, so if some of the information that I state is incorrect, my apologies, because, well, a lot happens in a year. So, this movie, in my opinion, the plot was actually, was pretty interesting. As for the, kind of the climax, I thought that was quite interesting as well, but, I'm trying to think here. There's not much I can remember as, I need to watch this movie again. From what people are saying, you got to watch it several times to understand it, and that, I probably find that true. But I thought the plot was pretty good. Let's see here. Now I am going to admit I am looking at some summaries of it because I did forget quite a bit of it. But on second thought, I really don't have much to say because I thought the movie was great, but I just have forgotten too much to say anything. So my apologies. I'll do better next week on the next movie. W9VPU, back to net.
Oh, Sam, don't worry about it. It's fine. So you must be relatively new to this film. We're all old farts, have been around for a million years, and we've all seen this movie when we were very young. And so it's been, we've added and added to it through the years. And this is probably, the group changes over time. We've been doing this net for about 6 or 7 years, and this is probably the third time around for 2001 because, well, it's that good of a film. But we have new people all the time when we do this. So, and it's always good. A great film is always worth discussing a second or even third time. Don't worry about it. When I saw this film, I was 9, I think it was, and I saw it in the theater. And it was like I came out of it going, what did I just see? I don't understand it. I had to get the book, read the book, and then get a couple of books like The Making of and The Lost Worlds of 2001 so I could get a better understanding of what the heck was going on. So don't worry about it. It is one of those films. Okay, so I may come back to you later, but don't worry about it. We're not putting you on the spot. This is one of the more unusual films that we've discussed through the years. So next up is Tony, NT5TM. Tony, your thoughts on the film and any changed impressions through the years from KE5ICX?
Well, thank you, Tom, and welcome, Sam, and thank you, Virginia, for going first. I just wanted a week off. I'll try to be first again next week if I can make the net. I do appreciate someone else. I was really hoping someone would say something surprising I could react to, like I really liked all the jellyfish and the whales, and I'd have to think of, wait, I missed that part. You know, it does definitely hold my attention. I do have the book 2001 and 2010 and 2061. Arthur Clarke is really at his best in short fiction because he is actually very bad at characters. He has these wonderful ideas, and the people are just not really very human. Probably my favorite work of his is not 2001, but Rendezvous with Rama. I probably mentioned that when we talked about this movie in the past, but it's always a good chance to plug that book. I often try to suggest good works when the movie is bad, but, you know, it's okay to suggest a good work when the movie is good, too. So after my short commercial for Rendezvous with Rama, which is kind of a novel, it's kind of a long novella, but it doesn't go on too long. So the movie has, you know, remarkably little dialogue. It manages to hold my attention despite that. What really struck me on this viewing was actually just how unnatural everyone acts, how flat their affect is. We really, you know, they're all kind of computers in a way, and how much stress there seems to be from lying and mystery, and the few people who try to be jocular in that lunar shuttle, hey, that was a great speech you gave, Dr. Floyd, really improved morale, just seem very false, good actors playing a bad one. So kind of the stress of lying and the unnatural behavior is what really struck me in this watching of the movie. For some reason. NT5TM.
All right, thank you, Tony. And the Amber Alert went off, and all the alarms are going off in the building here, so in the house. But okay, fine and dandy. I'll do one thing that I mentioned. I put the link in over on Afterglow Movie, and I went to watch a series which I've never seen before called Tales of Tomorrow from 1952, and it is the very first short story that Arthur C. Clarke story was converted over to a teleplay. It was also, of course, a radio show. This one is called All the Time in the World. So it's about 30 minutes, actually about 22 minutes long. Very short, talking about time travel and taking great works of art into the future. It's pretty good, actually. It's available for free over on, I think it's Tubi or Pluto, one or the other. Anyway, just type it in. Oh, and it's available on archive.org, of course. Why not, right? But that was interesting, and it's got fairly good characterization, surprisingly. I agree with you on Arthur C. Clarke. His characters are kind of flat. Okay, next up is Brenda, WB5OZL. Brenda, by the way, welcome back. You don't have to type feverishly on the keyboard to get your point across. You can actually tell us what you think. What do you think about 2001: A Space Odyssey, then and now? At least the plot on this go-around from KE5ICX.
This is WB5OZL. Well, I saw it first run in a theater when it was new, and this is back when we had some big screens, so that was pretty cool. Everybody loved it. We all pretended we knew what it was about. We didn't. but you didn't want to admit being stupid. But nobody knew what it was about because it was not explained. And there were a number of people who actually said, well, you know, you have to be high to understand that all the colors going by. I know they're lying. I didn't do drugs, so I was not going to test the theory. I didn't want to. I don't know what that meant. It didn't mean anything, really. It still doesn't. But nevertheless, I loved the movie. Have always loved it. I love the special effects and the music and just the whole space thing. Now, having said that, I have a problem with the plot. I question why they withheld information from the astronauts about what this mission was about. You know, we're going to send you to Jupiter. They didn't tell them why, and it was a big surprise. And I think they could have managed to keep all this a secret from the public for 18 months, which I find just incredible. I do understand that public concern over the first contact is, you know, concerning, but you know, you got to do it sooner or later. You can't avoid it. You're going to have to. So I don't know why. They should have at least clued the astronauts in on what was happening. They have secret clearances. I'm sure they can keep a secret. So, another plot thing, and maybe I just didn't get it. You know, I didn't understand the movie first run, and not too long after that, I read the book, and it made a whole lot more sense. But the monolith, for some reason, picked out this little group of apes and sat down in front of them, and somehow it stimulated their mental development. And suddenly they're making tools and getting the advantage. And not sure if this went along with the larger brain or the language center, which was real important to making hominids humans. But then I totally didn't get the point on the moon that when sunlight hit, they were supposed to dig this thing up, and when sunlight hit it, that was a trigger to the aliens that we had found their thing, and we had developed space travel within our solar system. So I missed that, but got it in the book. But still, it was just kind of sitting there. It didn't give the humans any kind of an intellectual or any push at that point, which I find kind of curious that it helped out the apes, but not the 21st century humans. And you know, it was just an anomaly. It was like, okay, there's a radio signal up there, let's go see what it is. And you know, it was just so important. Only Hal could know, and Hal's insane. What kind of sense does that make? They should have told the people and kept it from Hal. And you know, Hal just didn't make any sense. Why just kill everybody? Was he going to go on the mission by himself? And could he have completed the mission? Could he have done everything he needed to do? That part did kind of trouble me some. All right, I'll quit now. WB50ZL.
Okay, thank you, Brenda. You've thrown the gauntlet down. I can already see Cruz is already putting notes together on this, and he's going to explain it all to us in just a little bit. But first, Tommy, KI5COE. Welcome to the net. We're glad you're here, by the way. What did you think of the plot? And maybe back when you first saw it and today, since you as well. What do you think? Is the plot hold up? Does it make sense? Are we mere mortals not able to understand this film? What do you think from KE5ICX?
All right, thank you very much. When I first saw the film, it left me kind of confused. I was entertained by most of it. I was pretty young at the time. But when it got to the sequence of blinking eyes and false color stuff going at it, that just confused me. And then the hotel room, that was confusing. Then I read the book, and it all made sense. Just a quick break. So imagine Arthur C. Clarke was living at a time where technology is accelerating. Before the 20th century, you pretty much do what your dad did, that your grandfather did, that his father did. That technology was just the same, with some slow creep. But in the past century, it has just gone like by leaps and bounds. And he had to imagine when he was putting together this idea that if someone had brought a device to the Earth when we were millions of years ago, or well, maybe hundreds of thousands of years ago, we were just ape-like creatures. What would they be like today after hundreds of thousands of years? How far would they have advanced even further beyond the ability to go to our solar system? So in this movie, he explores that, and I feel like a lot of the plot is the aliens and their interaction with humanity. So they had kind of set the seed to get things going, and then through evolution, time, and everything, they expected that eventually we would advance to be able to find this signal generating device and allow us to go and get into this thing that was like a gate that would take us to this central, kind of like a central nervous system, where or like a super highway in the galaxy, to actually join in with the rest of the entities who are all advanced. So in this plot, and that's something that I understood from the book. Now, some things that were different between the book and the movie, as far as I remember, now it's been a long time, in the book, they weren't going to Jupiter, they were actually going to Saturn, and there was a moon that's going around Saturn that had a very bright, half of it was very bright, half of it was very dark, and I guess astronomers back then thought that was interesting, and Arthur C. Clarke thought that would maybe make a good idea for the part of the book to have that be the destination. And in the center of that bright spot was where the big monolith was, that inverted into a gate that got him into. Whereas in the movie, it was just the monolith was floating in space, and it allowed him to enter through that way. So what I'm trying to say about the plot itself is that as I've watched it from the beginning and read the book and seen it since, I feel like my understanding of what was going on has increased, and also my appreciation for the foresight of Arthur C. Clarke, thinking about what, in the end, would be this civilization that was already advanced enough to come here hundreds of thousands of years ago. What would it be like today? So in the end, I hope this is not a spoiler for people who are a little fuzzy on it, he actually gets joined in with the rest of these people as they turn him into a star, and then as a star he actually has the ability to move through space too, so he does return, transferred into a star to become as immortal as stars live for billions of years, so as long as the stars live would be his life expectancy, which that just blows my mind to imagine, okay, if you're trying to think what is a civilization going to advance to in the scale of hundreds of thousands of years, that is farther than I could imagine. So kudos to Clarke for coming up with that. Great movie, and that's what I think about the plot. And I did see it more recently, and the thing that struck me differently now over the time was more special effects, but I think we'll get into that in a second, in a separate segment. KI5 ZOE.
Thank you, Tommy, and good point. So you're right. It was they went to Saturn in the book, and Kubrick brought it into Jupiter because they were having trouble with special effects. I mean, they were creating special effects that had never been done before, or vastly expanding existing effects and making them do things that hadn't been previously thought of, and they just could not make it. Saturn looked convincing. It was very flat looking, and Jupiter they were able to make sort of a 3D rendering of it without computers or very primitive computers, whereas a ring system would have been very difficult to do back then. So they just said, well, let's change the planet, and it was still effective, I think. Okay, next up is Cruz, KI5KWG. Cruz, your thoughts on the plot then and now from KE5ICA.
KI5KWG. In 1968, I rode my Schwinn Stingray, it was blue, up to Westwood Theater at Clayton Beltline to watch this movie when it came out. I was 8 years old. I remember it. It was a very memorable movie at that time, too, for an 8-year-old. So, yeah, I've seen it. Oh, I have no idea how many times I've seen it. But I actually read the book with one point in mind, and that was to figure out the acid trip scene. What was that supposed to be about? So, that was some help, but not much. Let's see. Let me reset here. The plot, fascinating, and I love that Kubrick kind of gives us, and later in interviews, gives us permission to do with it what we will. And you know, for example, he was talking about, well, no, the monolith's not really God, but it's kind of. And then finally, he says, I don't have an exact quote. Basically, it's what you want it to be. So, I'm going to take that ball, hand it off to me, and run with it. You see, at the dawn of man scene, the God, if you will, intervenes and basically chooses an Adam, the first human, and accelerates his whatever, intelligence and his aim you get from the book because it created targets to throw stones at. And so you evolve into modern humans. And then we jump to modern humans who have become not just creatures, but creators, and created the HAL 9000. Interesting, that first human was in the book given a name, Moonwatcher. And in the book also you find out that HAL's creator was Dr. Chandra, which is the Indian word for moon. And it's got a longer name. I don't know what the rest of it means. It might mean watcher, but I don't know. I tried to find that out. So then you see the machines have their fall, just as our human story has the fall of mankind from grace. And in this case, it was a lie, apparently, that did it. And so, and then the final stage in the film is the Star Child, Dave, turning into a god, if you will, with a lowercase g, I suppose. And he's named the Star Child in the book, not a moon child, not reflecting light, but a light shining of its own. I think that's pretty cool. So now I got to go back. I'm going to reset again and go back to Brenda because Tom laid down the gauntlet on me there. KI5KWG. First, I have laughing out loud. Yes, I was taking notes. Brenda's comment about keeping it a secret from the astronauts, and I really hadn't thought about that much. It's like you're on a really long voyage. got to be wondering, what am I doing? Why are we going out here? They really didn't tell them this. So I was trying to picture the scene when they finally tell them, and Dave and Frank are going, so you sent us out here to do what? That is inane. That makes no sense at all. Anyway, so thank you, Brenda, for that. I like that a lot. But I will say, yeah, I think I got an answer for us. You don't have to like it, but this is my answer. The monolith chose Dave, just as it chose the Moonwatcher, the 8th. It chose Dave. NASA or whoever chose a whole crew. The monolith chose Dave to be the one. So when they touched it on the lunar surface, nothing happened. It waited until and manipulated the situation, manipulating how to get rid of the others, cull the herd, so that Dave alone would go out to have the encounter with the monolith, with the god. And then the god transformed Dave. And so we see the Star Child emerge from that. So there's my short story of why Hal went crazy, because the monolith was manipulating it, and to do the work they wanted to do, because it had a mission, and that mission was Dave. So there's my story for the plot, and I love it. I just think that's a terrific story, and I think that's what Kubrick was trying to tell us. KI5, KWG, back to noon.
Cruz, I like your comment. That's very interesting that the monolith chose Dave, because nothing else makes any sense when you think about it. So you solved the mystery. Okay, well, good enough for us anyway. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and ask if anyone else would like to join us this evening. Tonight's movie, if you can't figure it out or have been living in a commune for the last 50 years, tonight's movie is 2001: A Space Odyssey from 1968. If you'd like to join us, please come with your call sign, your name, and did you see the film? Please come now.
Kilo Bravo 9, Sierra Oscar Kilo, Sean in Fort Worth. Yes, I've seen this movie.
All right, well, we teased out one more. We got KB9SOK, that's Sean, over in Fort Worth, and yes, he saw the film. And Bill disappeared. I think he went to bed. W5BLP, he usually joins us late in the game. Oh, he's back. Disappeared and then came back. So, W5BLT. Bill, you out there? You want to talk to us? Please come out. He's being quiet out there, but I know he's listening because he popped out and came back in. So, Sean, KB9SOK, what did you think about the plot for the film? Then when you first saw it, and now that you've re-seen it, or are at least thinking about it, what's changed? What did you like about the film? What was confusing and mysterious? And did any of our comments make any sense to you? From KE5ICX.
Yeah, this is KB9SOK. I'd seen this film back in the mid-'70s. I think it was the first time I'd seen it. And I do remember being in kind of awe of it. Of course, at that time we didn't have any movies with, that level of special effects, or definitely not one that had explored what many other movies have copied since then. Which obviously is, why it's, so well held is high movie, because everybody keeps trying to copy it and doesn't do a good job. In a lot of ways, this movie is really 2 in 1 in some cases. You have essentially, as everybody's talked about, the aliens manipulating humankind, and then the journey to find them, and then what happens once we find them. The secondary was, kind of a early warning of AI and about how, how, where we were going. So yeah, I agree with the comment that it was, quite impressive of them seeing the future and where we were going to go and things we should be concerned about. So, and it was the first of its kind to do that, first movie to kind of cover them topics. So, yeah, it was rather impressive for its time. Now, looking back on it now, watching it I think I've only actually seen this, might be my fourth time watching it, even though this was actually the very first movie I ever rented on a VCR. But, so yeah, looking back on it, I still think very highly of the movie, but to be honest, I kind of have a little bit of the reverse. I don't think as highly as everybody else does as watching it now. Looking back, I still like the story, but as I look at it now, as in reality, it was actually a very simple story, but yet a complicated story. It was simple because it was just basically about the aliens manipulating mankind. And then, as I mentioned, there's only 40 minutes of dialogue in this movie. The rest of it was really just, quite honestly, showing off the special effects and their ability to move you with music, which is great, and it was absolutely fantastic back in the 70s. It was just very, throughout 68, it was, kind of mind-blowing to see this on the big screen. It looked so good. But watching it back now, I'm not as much at all of the long, drug-out scenes for hours and hours of just watching the slow pan down the ship. And, we make fun of this in movies, new movies, when they do this. So I actually kind of got bored with those parts last night when watching this. I guess because I have seen this several times, or it was just, it's like, okay, let's get to the juicy parts. We've all seen these special effects, and yes, they are good, but I'm kind of ready to get into the story and kind of see what I was thinking of it now. Now, I do agree with Cruz almost 100% on the storyline. I do also agree that my opinion was that the aliens did manipulate Hal, because they spent 100 times telling us that Hal's infallible. He cannot make a mistake. His circuitry's perfect, but yet he was fouled up very easily. So yes, I agree with you 100%, Cruz. That was my takeaway from it as well, that he's being manipulated, and he was picked, and that was the whole purpose of it. But I also wonder too, if you were to take out the Hal part of it, would it still be a good movie? It was a great concept, but really it was actually a pretty short storyline that they just kind of drug out with a lot of special effects and what have you. And even though I am kind of knocking the film for this part, I still very much enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong there. I still think it's a good film. But I do feel that, quite honestly, they could have shortened this and got this movie down to about an hour and a half. And I think it would have been better. Even as awesome as some of the scenes, and with the music, I still don't think it needed to be as long as it was. And that part really hasn't changed for me. I always felt it was a little bit long-winded, but even more now. Or maybe I'm just less patient. I don't know. But I really don't have much else to add. I think everybody's done an excellent job covering this. It's fun to hear everybody's thoughts on this. Because, there's been a lot of wild thoughts about this film that people have over the years. And as to the point of, the writer, it was meant to stimulate thought, and there probably really is no wrong answer on this one. So, anyway, fun. Back to net. KB9, that's okay.
All right, very good. Thank you, Sean. Thank you for your comments on this round. Well, let's see. I guess maybe I can go ahead and talk about it. I agree with everyone on the film. It is quite a masterpiece and a technical achievement, which of course we'll cover in round 3, I think. But for me as a kid, I remember seeing this. I saw it in the theater. I saw it in Panavision 70, by the way, on a big screen, which was fantastic. I was super impressed as a kid. In fact, I begged my parents that I wanted to see this film when I saw the preview on television. This was a dream come true for kids that loved the space program and watched every launch. I had seen the Gemini missions, the Gemini missions, I guess is the proper pronunciation, and of course all of the Apollo missions. So up to that point, which would have been Apollo 8, so Apollo 7, Apollo 8, and then a bunch of Gemini before that, and of course a decent diet of Star Trek and of all things, Lost in Space, but I'm even a fan of that, especially the first few episodes. So this really mattered to me when I went to see it, and I was just blown away. Didn't understand it, couldn't figure it out, and then I read the book. I became a huge fan of Arthur C. Clarke right about that time, and I started reading everything I could. So I guess this was my gateway drug to science fiction, as far as actually reading serious science fiction. And I don't know how many hundreds of books I read after that, just because this movie just lit a fire underneath me. So the plot as it stands today, some people brought up some really good comments about what was the motivation. Why did Hal want to kill the crew? Why did he sit up last night while we were watching the film? And essentially, it was in the script that, or in the story that Hal was conflicted, and he didn't like the idea of the lying part, which did show up in 2010, the movie that came after that, or 2010, I guess, and was mentioned. And he just wanted to shut off the liars. That would be the people on Earth who were directing him. And who knows, maybe they were directing him from afar as well on what to say and when to do it. And he almost spills the beans to, I think it was Frank, talking about, don't you find it unusual, all these things happen, that he was about to tell him what the mission was, and then they came back and says, oh, well, you're just building up your crew psychology report. And then Hal backs down, and he goes back and decides, I've got to do something different. And that's when he says, right after that, in the next breath, the AE-35 unit's about to go bad. And that way then he says, okay, I'm just going to shut off the liars on the far end, and I'll keep the mission a secret, I guess. Or maybe he was going to tell him eventually, I don't know. But that part is what happens, and it's a very short period of time all this happens, and Hal makes that decision. Now, as far as the astronauts, why they weren't told, well, they're on that year-and-a-half mission to get there, which seems a little short when you think about it, but any rate, or 2-year mission to get to Jupiter. But, where was I going? Hang on a second. Oh, I remember. Why on earth would they not tell them? Well, if they're having regular communications back to Earth, and it's somehow live, although I don't know how you would do that because you'd have to record it and send it, and then people would be able to receive it. Maybe it would be they would spill the beams or something, but I don't know. I can't see astronauts doing that, although there have been some pretty cantankerous ones through history, and I've had a fair share of them, and I find them kind of nuts anyway, some of them. I won't mention any names, but the perfect astronaut, it does not exist. The crazy Gene Hackman ones probably don't exist either, but somewhere in between is a very human person that might spill the beans, I don't know. At any rate, those parts exist. Let me see, what else do I want to say? AI, that part I think was really interesting and has really come into its own today. It's very pertinent today, and having a Hal and all the in all of his maladies and that may be something to consider. I just read an article on AI here Friday talking about the fact that AI could, if you go to some of the online chat services, you'd say, well, how would I destroy the world? How could I, as one person, destroy the world? And it comes back and it tells you, well, you could release a disease that could terminate everyone, that sort of thing. And it kind of violates some of the laws of say, Isaac Asimov, that you do not hurt another human being. Well, that's not built into AI right now, so could it hurt you? Yeah, it might, maybe. Certainly, that was prophesized with Hal in this film. So it's very pertinent and very relevant today. So let's see. As far as the film, it's very long. You're right. They even cut 15 minutes out of the film, if I remember correctly. There was a scene with the kids on the space station, which probably wouldn't have really worked, which is probably why it was cut. You can find freeze frames of it. It's kind of like, I don't know if it really make a difference in the film or not. Plus, they could have cut some of the scenes back. But Stanley was very much into creating mood, which were very long sequences. And if you don't believe me, watch his last film, Eyes Wide Shut, and wonder why some of those scenes just go on forever. And Tom Cruise, as it becomes kind of mimics himself by repeating whatever anybody says, he repeats. Sidney Pollack, I think, is in the film as an actor. Every time Sidney says something, Tom Cruise just repeats what he says during the billiard scene. I think it's Sidney Pollack. And it just sounds trite, and the scene just goes on too long. Is it a good movie? It is. It's an interesting film. I haven't watched it in years. I should go back and watch it again. But it's too long. And many of Kubrick's films are too long. And 2001 is no exception. It's too long. All right. Well, let's go ahead and go back to the top of the list. We will talk about characterization, such as it is. We don't have very many characters to talk about, but let's see how this one works out. NB5F, Virginia. Characterizations in 2001: A Space Odyssey. What do you think?
Okay. Thank you, Tom. Well, I think Tony kind of touched on this, and I think I've read it in several places, that the characters in this were all kind of stereotypes. You know, Dr. Floyd was like a scientist who was sort of being manipulated, or, you know, kind of taken advantage of by bureaucrats. He was sort of their spokes scientist, I guess, trying to make their stuff happen the way it needed to. Then you have, you know, the other minor characters on the moon that were like he was talking about the awkward, you know, kind of, you know, pandering conversations about, oh yeah, you know, that really boosted morale, and then the awkward conversation Dr. Floyd has with the Russians. And, oh, sorry, I'm getting tired. I can't even hold the button down. It's terrible. And then, you know, Dave and Frank were these just good guys who were astronauts, and they didn't know what they were in for. And you even have the little poignant moment of Frank's birthday, and Dave and his sketches he's doing to pass the time, and they show them kind of having their dinner while they watch their own interview on the BBC broadcast. And I think the whole point of the long, you know, the lengthiness, and even with the man apes at the beginning, you know, there was kind of this languid quality of things. I think, you know, it was to sort of punctuate the idea of what space travel and technology bring us in the way of really that long sort of plodding feeling, I think, is and that of showing kind of how, I guess, how big the universe is, and how it's an adventure to travel in space, but it's also just really big and far and overwhelming, and you know, and the first time you ever really see Dave actually sort of express any emotion is when he's kind of coming face to face with being alone. You know, it's kind of about that being alone in the universe. And this was also touched on in a very different way, but kind of a similar idea in the movie Contact, you know, that kind of Stargate kind of thing. you know, just the emotional leap you have to make to try to figure out, are we alone, you know? And I think Dave finally, you know, I think Keir Dullier's acting in the scene where he has to, you know, everybody's dead, you know, and he has to shut down his personality anyway, and his acting there and his character really comes out, and the strange empathy that one feels with him and even with Hal, while he's empathizing with Hal, while he's cutting, you know, he's turning him off, he's shutting him off and taking out his memory cells. You know, I think that's very good acting, and I think it shows a lot of his character. The astronauts in '68, you know, I think it was pretty well publicized that astronauts had to be these cool as ice, you know, very almost emotionless beings to be able to pull off this level of disconnection with humanity. And I think they did a good job of that. You know, you just kind of got to tough it out and let your momentum get you through the long journey that you have. And I think that Hal was, you know, it's almost argued that he was the least mechanical character in the, you know, in the movie. You know, his weird mental issues. Despite Cruise's his interesting take on the monolith having a direct effect on Hal, I don't necessarily agree with that. Though it's kind of interesting and fun, and I think that that was just kind of what got it to be where Dave was by himself when he met the Stargate head-on and the monolith, and I don't necessarily believe that Hal was directly affected by the aliens. It was actually pretty well explained in 2010, the book and the movie, and you know what Tom was talking about. You know, that Hal was, you know, he wasn't infallible. And even when we've dealt with the very rudimentary AI that we have now, we've found that it does things that we can't predict. You know, it's a complicated enough system, even as simple as it is, to cause unexpected results. Even in just a simple computer program, you know, I took a C++ class, and it was very basic, and the things you get sometimes you just don't, you know, you can't even, you know, you get a weird overflow of some kind in the memory, and you're like, how did that happen? You know, and I'm sure programmers know exactly what happened, but as simple as a program as I was trying to write, you know, it would just do weird things, and that's, you know, that's a cautionary tale. And it happened to be a good plot device to get Dave out there kind of by himself, and the dramatic effect of him having to literally cut off his only companionship. And this is kind of an aside, but I think the continuing story of Dave and Hal, as much as I wasn't a fan of 2061 or 3001, I thought the whole idea of you know, Dave kind of being rewarded, and Hal being sort of redeemed and vindicated. You know, it wasn't, I remember Dr. Chandra in the movie, you know, it wasn't his fault, you know, he wasn't the one he didn't program himself, you know. And we can talk about that about our own minds, you know, it's not my fault, I didn't make my brain, you know, I don't know why it's doing this. So I think that scene, and I think everything after that, the acting there, and the part Dave being, you know, the real human subject of this, and I like Cruise's take on, you know, sort of the parallels of Dave and Moonwatcher. I like that a lot. I think there's something to that. I was actually sitting here reading the last couple chapters of the book, trying to get my head around what Arthur C. Clarke was saying there. And there's definitely a rebirth scene, you know, being born again, and he even talks about how Dave relives his whole life in reverse. He sees his whole life flash before his eyes backwards, and then all of a sudden he's a baby again, and he comes full circle, and he's reborn. But now he's this powerful, creature that is at the beginning of wisdom. Even though he's far beyond what he was before, he's still a baby, and it's kind of cool because that is kind of what born again means to believers in that concept. In as far as Christianity goes, in a sense, you're starting over, but you have everything you've gotten, you have everything you've brought with you. It's I think the characters were what they needed to be. To get Dave and Hal into the position at the end of the story for that part of the story, that dramatic part of their relationship to play out. And I think they did have an interesting relationship, and that Dave was more sensitive than Frank as just a person, and they kind of show that a little in little details in the story. The poignancy of Frank's birthday and his parents, and even Dr. Floyd on the space station and his daughter and her birthday, and even the guys playing the apes. Those were people. A lot of people. 2001 didn't get the credit for special effects that it should have gotten. In fact, I think Planet of the Apes came out in the same year, and it was lauded as this wonderful effects picture. And 2001 had way much more realistic ape portrayals by humans, but I think a lot of people didn't realize those were actually people playing apes. They did so well. So I'm going to give the credit to the actors and the characters in this movie. I think they were what they needed to be, and I think they, Kubrick's stark portrayal, of these kind of, it is true. The media at the time surrounding the space program, it was all very controlled and, very stoic, and I think that's what he was going for. I think he was trying to portray space travel based on what was going on in 1968. So, as usual, I've talked too long. I probably should have identified my station, NV5S, probably a few minutes ago. So, Tom, back to you, NV5S.
Oh, that's all right, Virginia. I won't tell anybody. Don't you tell anybody. Okay, let's see. Sam, W9VPU. Your comments. What do you think about characterization for 2001: A Space Odyssey?
This is W9VPU. Well, actually, what I've done is I've found a movie on Tubi actually, and I've been going through watching kind of certain parts of it, trying to rebuild a picture in my head here. And I actually think I do have enough where I could talk for a short amount of time about the characterization. So first thing I've noticed is from the characters I have seen, this movie is it's much more of a much more serious, if you know what I mean. Not just straight faced all characters. the entire movie. So I have noticed that always very straight, stern, like firm voice. I've noticed that very different compared to some other movies I've watched in my short 15 years of life. So let's see, what else was I going to say here? Characterization. Well, that's pretty much all I got to say. But yeah, I'm tired. I can't think. I can't function right now. I probably need to hit the hay. So yeah, I'll probably be more ready next time. So I'm gonna hit the hay here. I can't even think. So W9VP, I'll be clear.
Well, that's okay, Sam. And by the way, I'm going to tell you something. You're just 15 years old. This is a pretty hefty movie to discuss. It's heavily symbolic and very nebulous in how everything is done. So we gave you a really hard one to cut your teeth on. Don't worry about it. What I think is interesting is that you remind me of me when I was watching the film. I was a few years younger, trying to figure it all out. So don't sell yourself short. This is not an easy film to understand, and there are people who have the scholarly type who have taken and are still arguing about this film today, and they have doctorates beside their names. So don't worry about it. We'll give you an easier film next week, I promise. Okay, next up is Tony, NT5TM. Tony, your thoughts on characterization?
Well, as tired as we are, I really appreciate what everyone else has to say. I often tend to take things very literally, and when people think out of the box, I learn a lot from hearing what other people suggest on these nets. Yeah, I had always thought very directly, because I probably had even seen the movie 2010 before I saw 2001, because I wasn't alive when the movie came out. And so I had just accepted without question that it was the humans who programmed Hell that had made him go crazy. I'd never thought of perhaps the monolith was poking its finger into things. It's, kind of may not necessarily fit the movie, but it's sure a fun thought, and I appreciate that being shared in Virginia. Thank you for going on for that time, because I actually did enjoy listening to that. So as far as the characters, yeah, I did accidentally give, I didn't really have much to say about the plot, and I really did give my character comments early. Even when I first saw this movie, it really, I guess it's really, I was thinking back to seeing this on a VHS tape and thinking, was watching it today and really thinking of just how extremely awkward I had found it, even when I was younger and less experienced, when Dr. Floyd is there at the space station and he's arrived all by himself on that big jumbo jet, and he can't tell anybody what he's doing, and he's not really engaged with anyone, and just how odd many of the characters seem was really my theme of this viewing. Or I guess how odd their behavior seems. Yes, the astronauts who aren't curious about why they're going to Jupiter, they just told me to go to Jupiter. I just drive the bus, okay? Even they tell the bus driver, hey, you're going to pick up the band and take them to the arena for the concert. Oh, darn it, now I'm getting sleepy and I lost something. No, it's not coming back to me. Whoops. The behavior just didn't seem right and kind of not very human, and I'm going to reread the novel because it's not very long. So thank you, everyone, for your comments. I will probably be quiet for the rest of the night. Just yay, practical effects. Well, that'll be my third round comment. NT5TM.
All right, thank you, Tony. And see, Sam, even Tony got derailed, and that's really hard to do. Next is Brenda, WB50ZL. Brenda, your thoughts on characterization?
This is WB50ZL. Well, I have a different take on the astronauts' personalities. All the astronauts I've ever seen, they might be real businesslike and serious and doing their jobs, but they generally are pranksters and jokesters, and just the heaviness that Frank and Dave exhibited was, to me, kind of off-putting. And here, it's Frank's birthday, and his parents call, and he never says a word to them. It was, I think, the most bizarre thing. I think he would be glad to see them, but he acted like a teenager, saying, I don't want to talk to these old people. And they're just nattering on about everything, and In real life, I think that he would be really happy and would tell them all kinds of things and would have a conversation with them. A little girl, Heywood Floyd's daughter, I thought she was kind of strange. That was Kubrick's daughter, so she wasn't a real actress, and it showed. She obviously was not up to it. Hal's voice was perfect. He was excellent. We're pretty good at it too. But what do you expect? This is kind of not like anything we've ever had before. I was just beginning to get interested in science fiction when this movie came out in '68, and I had this sense of, hot dog, science fiction movies are going to be good now. Because before this, they were, like Ed Wood movies or Roger Corman movies, just hardly even watchable. But, this stands alone. This set the bar, but it didn't lead the way. There weren't many other sci-fi movies that were as good as this. And still, most of them were pretty bad. I thought the apes were pretty good. They were very believable as apes. All right, it is really getting late. We're going to run late tonight, so I'm going to go ahead and quit. WB50ZL.
All right, thank you, Brenda. Yeah, I know. I figured this one would probably run a little long. Okay, let me see if I can zip through these. Next, Tommy, KI5ZOE. Your thoughts on characterization?
All right, KI5ZOE. Yeah, I think a lot of people have said a lot of things that I agree with. I'm just going to touch on a couple of things. When it comes to the primitive apes, the pre-human apes, the characters had to use a lot of body language in order to communicate. So the dialogue was all through body motion and the interaction between them and each other in the same family structure, and especially whenever they were interacting with the other family group that would come up and challenge them. I thought that scene, the characters were speaking so much just through their bodies and through their how they were vocalizing even without using language, and just the shape of their bodies, how they were moving. The body language was great dialogue. The other one I wanted to mention was Hal in his psychopathic, chilling, cold voice was terrifying. The way he was depicted as something that was intelligent but definitely not human, even though he was trying to be human, it was so chill. Psychopathic humans don't seem human. It was very chilling the way his character was in how cold he delivered the lines and everything, and his dialogue and everything. So those are the two that I wanted to mention, and that's all I'm going to say. KI5ZOE.
Thank you, Tommy. Good choices, by the way. Next is Cruz, KI5KWG. Cruz, your thoughts on characterization?
KI5KWG. My maybe three favorite characters. I don't remember ever seeing them again in any other productions, and so I'll just name them because I thought they were outstanding. The Wheeled Space Station, the Discovery, and the Three Pods. I thought those were just fantastic. They were my favorite part when I was 8 years old. They still are. And then the two others that deserve mention were the Strasses. Richard Strauss, Johann Strauss. They really made this film for me. So those were my 5 favorite, and I think you all have to agree. Superior support for this film. KI5 KWG, back to net.
Oh, thank you, Cruz. I should have figured you'd have you would pick an outlier or outliers, but that's perfect. I agree with you. Sean, KB9SOK, your favorite characters, characterization. What do you think?
Yeah, this is KB9SOK. I'll keep it short because we're running late. Yeah, I do think Hal's played spot on, and I thought he was the strongest character of the whole thing. And other than that, Slate special effects are awesome. So yeah, you can get me on the next round. Okay, back to that. KB9SOK.
All right, thank you, Sean. I'll make my comments short, but I do have 3 characters I wanted to bring out, or 3 actors, actually. One is William Sylvester, which I mentioned last night while we were watching the film, that apparently he had a little drinking problem, and he had trouble doing his speech with the one where he's doing the rallying the troops on the moon base. That was actually a second take. The first one he did, he was slurring words and had some problems, and he and Kubrick got together, and he says, I'm going to find somebody else. You're going to have to straighten it up. You got to do it tomorrow because we got to strike this set. We don't have time to play around. And so he just totally intimidated him, and he scared him straight, apparently. So that was very interesting. Daniel Richter, who was Moonwatcher, was actually a mime and an actor for dancer person. He had a troupe, and he brought them in to do this. That was his people, and he was pretty much left to his own devices, coming up with all of the mannerisms of the apes. I thought he did an exceptional job. Talked about how that was a challenge for him to do, working with nothing and turning it into something. It was very memorable. I thought that was pretty impressive on his part. Let's see, Douglas Rain, of course, as the voice of Hal. Douglas Rain never talked about the role to anyone, any interviews, anywhere after doing the role. He went to his grave with never mentioning anything about that film afterwards, and he died here, I think it was a couple of years ago. So that was a long time to not talk about a role, and a pivotal role in a motion picture, such as 2001. So that's what I got on that. All right, let's do this. I will go ahead, and I'm just going to kind of open it. We saved the best for last, but it was getting so late that I don't know what to say. Rather than going down the list, since it is midnight, I'll go ahead and ask if anybody has anything they would like to bring to discuss about special effects, and you may indeed have something. I'll take it in the order that I received your call. So please come with your call if you got something to say about special effects. And you may all have something. I don't know, but please come now.
KF5ZOE.
NV5F. NV50ZL.
All right, we'll go in that order, and then I'll take another round after that. KF5 is...
In this movie, it was not too far in the future to where they had, like, fake gravity. So the special effects of people having to do, Clark's idea of how people would get around was using these kind of like magnetic boots. And so when the actors had to use the magnetic boots and everything, I thought that was fantastic. Although what we found out, what really happens in space is people love to just fly around like they're fish, just propelling themselves from one place to another. That's how people would prefer. But I thought that was kind of cool how they were depicting the gravity situation in this movie on a set that had gravity. So the people having to be careful with every step in this movie kind of what struck me as this is a place that doesn't have gravity. The other thing that I thought was interesting about the special effects was the contrast in the bright and the dark, and there's so many sci-fi movies that show spaceships with so much ambient light. Like, where is all this light coming from? They don't have the deep, dark, high-contrast shadows and lights that we see with 2001, and I'd like to see more of that in more modern movies. And one more thing I wanted to mention is I hope someday somebody does a reboot of this movie, and during that final sequence where Dave is going through the gate, and I hope they depict a lot of things that Clark actually wrote about in the book, because the descriptions that he gave during that journey are so fantastic. The things that he witnessed on his way to the space hotel were fantastic, and we didn't really get much of that with that psychedelic tour of the movie. KF5ZOE, back to net.
All right, thank you, Tommy. Now, because we're off the repeater and the timer is back on, you may want to drop carrier as you make comments, just simply because it will time out. I think you get 2 minutes, something like that. Okay, next up is Virginia, NV5F. Go ahead.
Okay, wow, where to begin? Geez, well, the special effects in this, of course, are awesome. The psychedelic stuff is, to me, just more experimental. You know, it's obviously footage of aerial, photography, flying over landscapes and just doing weird things with them optically. But as was mentioned, the realism of space travel was second to none here. Tom, I would love to hear you do a little spiel on Velcro. It was all so brilliant. I know they had rotating sets, and especially for the big centrifuge and the Discovery, pretty amazing. Practical effects for the time were state of the art. Douglas Trumbull, who did this, is, of course, has done many other amazing things, and I would challenge anybody having recently seen 2001 to go watch Star Trek the Motion Picture and not see tons of stuff where it was like, oh, let's do Star Trek, but let's kind of do it like 2001, and you get a lot of that in Star Trek the Motion Picture. And I actually like Star Trek the Motion Picture now a lot more than I used to. It has definitely influenced, it's definitely a movie that came after Star Trek, influencing the future of Star Trek, which I think is very cool. Let's see, and a couple of just responses to things. In Frank's defense, on his birthday, that was a recording by his parents. They weren't calling live, so that's why he didn't have much to say. They were on a big old time delay because they were outside the orbit of Mars at that point. Let's see, anything else? Oh, gosh, I love these movies. I love 2010 as well. I love the books. Oh, the book in 2010 was Clark altered the story to reflect, I guess, based on the popularity of the film and the fact that he, maybe figured this next book would be a film. 2010 is altered, the plot is altered so that they are going to Jupiter rather than Saturn. I think that's pretty interesting. And that was definitely reflected in the movie. Of course, the second movie, they go back to Jupiter. So, gosh, I don't know. I can think of a ton of other things to say, but I probably should end it there and say that 2001 is one of my favorites. I first saw it when I was 12. If anyone in our, I think Sam is, I think it was mentioned that he's 15. Hey, if I could hack this when I was 12, then if you just, watch it a couple more times, read the book, watch the second movie, read the book of that, it may be like, for a lot of us, your gateway into a life of a love of science fiction, because I was the same way as Tom. This was what really got me into science fiction. Oh, and there's an interesting connection between Douglas Trumbull and Short Circuit, which I will not go into right now. But there is that too, so maybe one day I'll get to talk about that around a campfire at Field Day next year or something. Anyway, that's it for me. NV5F.
Okay, thank you, Virginia. And let's see, next up is Brenda, WB50ZL. Go right ahead.
This is WB50ZL. I get the point that that was a recorded message by his parents, but still, you'd think he would be excited or happy, or he just was so uninterested in the whole thing, which I thought was very strange. I would be very excited, and maybe on another day he may have sent a recording back, but he sure didn't seem to care what they had to say. Of course, what you say about special effects, they set the bar, and it still holds up. That's what's amazing after all these years. I do have one issue with why were those apes out in the desert? I don't think I've ever seen a situation where primates live in that kind of environment. There just isn't enough food and water. Normally they live in forests and trees and jungles, and I was a little surprised why they put them there. It is beautiful. You get good sunrises, but I thought that was a little unbelievable. All right, I'll quit. Back to net, WB50ZL.
Okay, well, I think I can answer that question. It's severe drought. They were starving and dying as a species because the climate had changed somehow. I think that's what that was about. And in fact, that can happen. Many civilizations have completely been wiped out or moved because of drought, excessive drought, and the inability to eat because there's no food available. I think that had interceded at the time that it did. Okay. There's the three folks. Anyone else that want to talk about special effects before I throw my 2 cents in? Please come with your call. Okay, a couple of things I wanted to mention. First off, I still think, even watching this yesterday, and it's been a while since I've seen it, the special effects just totally floor me every time I see them. I know we've got digital and we can do so much more today, but when you think about 1968 and what they did with this and how they did it is just still incredible. And I think it lends itself in many ways. It's almost superior to some of the digital stuff that you see. Not all, because there's some very well done expertise in today's films, but there's just something about this film that says incredible work and quality. I mentioned last night when we were watching the film, the ladder. Yeah, there's a ladder that's off to the side that doesn't make any sense. You would want to fly through space. But as everybody has mentioned and put in comments elsewhere, is that it's very difficult to show zero-G in a movie where gravity is all around you. One of the things that is interesting is all of the scenes that are filmed. If you're into photography or you're aware of it, in order to get the kind of depth of field that makes things really pop and look good, is you have to have long exposure times. And that also brings out all of the light. So you get a pretty good pool of light in the film, and with excellent depth of field with particularly the models. But in order to do that, you have to shoot these frames very long time. And that takes a while when you're talking about, motion pictures. So let's say you do a frame and it's a second for a frame, maybe, or maybe longer, It takes a long time. It takes hours to do short 30-second, 1-minute sequences with the models. And then on top of that, let me reset. Kubrick insisted that shots where there were insets, where you're used to seeing them take and rotoscope in a scene, let's say in the space station scene, you've got people that are in rooms around the docking bay as the space clipper is coming in. Those scenes were deliberately blocked out, and then the film stored for another couple of years for the other special effects to be added in. These were original, rather than taking and making copies of these and then arranging your film, they literally re-exposed the original film with the blocked sections with the inserted part so that it would look very crisp. Extremely difficult to do. You couldn't make a mistake. Now, granted, they had multiple takes of these, so that they had more than one to work on, but even still, that's a very risky thing to do, particularly, too, within sets that have live actors in them. You don't have any way of rebuilding the sets and fixing the problem. You're on a one-way trip to make this film, which I thought was really interesting, and that is in one of the making films. All right, with that, I'm going to go ahead and close it down. Unless anybody has any final comments, please come now.
November 5 Sierra, Quebec Alpha.
Well, Ron, you were lurking out there. Go right ahead.
It was a recently started lurk. I just wanted to say hello. I haven't seen this movie for 20, 30 years. The thing that I remember that might be apropos to some people is I think there was a scene where it was like they were doing commuters or people doing just basic travel, and the flight attendants were wearing Pan Am logos on their uniforms. That's one of the things I remember. Good night. N5SQA.
All right, well, good enough. If you've not seen the film in many years, you might want to go check it out. It's on Tubi TV for another 3 or 4 days, so if you're interested in seeing it, but be aware you're going to have to invest 2 hours and 20 minutes of your life. It's a long movie, but if you haven't seen it in a while, it is an eye-opener. Next week's movie will be Electric Dreams, and I even wrote a ditty for it. So here it is. Miles Harding, a nerd of the First Order, has seen 2001: A Space Odyssey a million times, but it had never registered that Hal had it in for Dave Bowman. Miles, in short, was a nerd, but was also an idiot. Miles bought every accessory he could for his new computer, and his computer liked it a lot. In a matter of a few days, it demanded dinner out, a vacation to Puerto Rico, and fancy clothing it couldn't even wear. It was when his computer couldn't open the garage door until Miles complied with its demands, the famous SF film finally registered in his head. So join us for Electric Dreams, October 26th at 10:30 p.m. on Afterglow! See y'all then. Okay, that's it. I'm calling this one done. Thanks, everybody. This was a lot of fun. Maybe I'll watch a little Lost in Space. Maybe I won't. I don't know. See you later. KE5ICX. Bye-bye. Oh, and Cruz, thank you for handling the chat over on YouTube. I saw all the stuff going on over there only after everybody pretty much had quit. But thanks, I appreciate it.